Welcome, friends. Today, we are doing a very special live stream. Marvelous. That is right, my friends. Once again, I have returned to you, but this time I have a guest, and I will be joined by another guest very soon. And the guest I am joined with right now is Jura Rose.
Hello.
Hello.
It is me.
Is it?
It is.
Thank God.
I mean, there's only one strawberry tart, as you can see.
Yes, that is some kind of underwater strawberry tart looking thing you've got there, Jura.
It is. Is it up the nose?
Ooh.
Is it up the nose? That's the
Up
question.
the nose. I still have in the nose the smell of Jura Rose.
I'm good. How are you, Rich?
I'm panicking because I can't find my glasses. Give us 2 seconds.
Right,
I am
find your
truly
glasses.
old. Oh! There we go. I've got it. I'm sorted now. We are here. Welcome to everybody in the chat. We are still waiting on Houdini, who is being fashionably late. But we have Jura Rose and we have a Rich Mitch. So, let's say hello to everybody in the chat. I hope people will confirm that the sound is okay. I believe the sound is sound. Jura seems to think the sound is sound.
It's all sound. A lot of people are just talking about staying awake to listen to us. We're honoured.
Yes, that's right. Thank you,
people
everybody.
missing your beauty sleep for
Oof.
us.
Much needed in my case, I can tell you. Fucked. Okay.
And they're talking about Jeremy Fragrance for some reason.
Oh no. Apparently he's got a new fragrance out. Have you heard about this?
Nope. I don't ever hear about him other than today.
Well, Jura, he has a new fragrance and it's called Most Masculine.
Nice.
And do you want to know what the notes are?
What is it? Pure
Pure
masculinity.
dopamine.
Oh, I knew it was pure something.
Yeah, pure bollocks.
High grade.
Yeah, tinctured. He's been tincturing bullshit like. You know what I mean? It's going to be a fecal ood.
Have you got anything to hydrate yourself with, Rich, during this stream?
I'm literally just reaching for a drink now. Do I sound dry?
No, I'm just making sure you have something within reach, because I've got a nice tea. I've got a Earl Grey Pu'er tea.
You've got an Earl Grey poo tea?
Yes.
Oh. What's that?
No, I need a cup of tea. It's good for the vocal cords for thy.
Well, milk, something a little bit milky, something a little bit oily. Excuse me.
Well, milky and oily, that's just taking us back to Jeremy Fragrance, isn't it?
Ugh. That's so gross.
Yeah, no, he's
a horrible man.
I'm waiting for him to collaborate with the new president of the United States. I can see that happening.
No politics. Stop that.
I'm looking to get kicked off.
Yes, you will get kicked off swiftly. You'll get a swift kick in the pants. I made the mistake of talking about politics to somebody yesterday and I could feel me fucking blood pressure rising.
You hear that, people? No politics. We're just here to bash Jeremy Fragrance, and that's it.
Yes, that's not a political statement to bash that cunt. Like, everybody on all sides of the argument can fucking bash that cunt. Like, fuck him. Jesus.
So what's everyone wearing today? What are you wearing?
Yes, what's everybody's scent of the day? What's my scent of the day? My scent of the day today was by Perfume Reviews, and it's called Aazelwood. And I was looking around at my collection and I was thinking, what haven't I worn? I felt like wearing something I hadn't worn a lot of. And I what do they call it when you pluck for something? I went for Aazelwood by Perfume Reviews, and it was great. I think it's probably best suited to the month either side of the solstice. So you've got late November, maybe the beginning of November, all the way up until about the middle of January. You know, because it's got that kind of pine tree. It's got that pine tree fire kind of thing. You know, what the fuck is this fucking doing? Hold on. Sorry, my computer just decided to fucking shit all over us from a great height.
It's talking about Arso.
Well, that's right. Aye, it's not happening. It's not having it. Like, it's not very happy at all.
I mean, it is an unfortunate name, isn't it, Arso, for the English language, but it does mean burnt in Italian.
Well, I don't know. I barely speak English, like, so I've got no idea. Like, I'm just typing out a comment. I'm one of those people who types with one finger.
It sounds like whatever you're pressing. Have you seen those big enter buttons that you smash with your fist? You know,
yes, that's essentially what I'm doing. Yes,
that's what I can hear, and I'm imagining it's just one of those, and you're just slamming it.
Yes, Hulk smash,
yes.
Duck smash,
with one of those big Hulk hands. You know, you can buy for the kids.
Yes, that's exactly right. Aye, it's mental.
Mitch was asking, "Are you 89?" No, he's 69.
Oh, shut up, you tart. That's an outrageous.
That's a compliment.
It's what? It's not. I'm 39 actually. Would you believe? I'm not sure I'm gonna make 69 or 89. Much less 89. I wouldn't mind living till I was 81 because that would be the 1000th anniversary of the Battle of Hastings.
Well,
that's my goal. I would like to live till I was at least 81.
Manifest it, Rich. Manifest it.
Manifest it.
I'm trying to look what everyone's wearing. The only person I've seen mention anything was... Where are you? I'm scrolling through the comments. Turn on, tune in, drop out.
Drop
Number
out
5, O well, I could do O in out, which is what's capitalized. Number 5, O premiere. Dick Curry's wearing O Sacré by Healy. Tim is wearing Antaeus.
Yes.
What else?
What are you wearing?
I'm not wearing anything at the moment. That's terrible. Well, I had a shower just very recently. That's why.
Oh, so what are you going to put on then? What
maybe
did you wear today?
I think I should put on a dressing gown. It's quite cold in this rhinestone bikini.
That's outrageous. Stop that.
I don't know what I would wear. I'd have to leave the room and go and stare at my cabinet for 10 minutes.
Yeah, I kind of do that. Well, I don't stare for 10 minutes, but I do look for a while, you know?
Have you ever looked left and come back again, and left and looked again?
I rarely do that, actually, because I end up just fucking... picking something at the end of the day. I'm just like, oh, fuck it, and wear that, you know?
I have clocked myself doing it like 5 times, going back and forth, trying to figure out what to wear and not coming to any conclusion. And then I make the most terrible decisions after I've done that. And wear something I didn't really want to wear. And sometimes I think maybe I didn't actually want to wear anything at all that day.
Okay. What about Agar Ebony?
I haven't worn that in... Oh God, it's well before Christmas. Probably November.
Why?
It's buried at the back somewhere, and that partly reflects my decisions. What I'm going to reach for. You know, I don't want to be sort of pulling everything out to put it back in again.
No, I get what you're saying. So you only have one collection, don't you? You're not like me. You don't split it up into halves and quarters.
No, mine's a bit more chaotic.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a bit more spontaneous when you're picking things.
So I'm about as spontaneous as I'm willing to let myself be, you know. Like I quite like to have a little bit of structure, but within that a lot of freedom, you know. So the autumn and the winter, the autumn and the winter rotation is as being one, and then the spring and summer being another, right, allows me to have freedom to pick from between 150 and 200 fragrances at a time without it becoming too much, without them all being laid out in front of us.
Yeah.
And it still allows for a decent presentation sort of thing, you know. It's not like, oh, excuse me. It's not like some kind of overwhelming, overbearing fragrance nightmare where you like walk in and you become stuck by like the punishment of choice.
It's a bit like dartitis.
It's a bit like what?
You know dartitis?
Not massively, no.
It's a colloquialism, but you know dart players, they couldn't actually let go of the dart because it's so
oh god, right, yes, it's like
bit, and you can't actually pick anything.
Yes,
you don't know what to wear. I'm probably approaching that.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. It's the agony of choice. It's kind of like, well, yes, it's difficult to, like dartitis. Yes, I know what dartitis is. This is kind of like everything. It's like a tsunami. It's like a tidal wave of perfume all at once, and you're like, fuck, you know. You're like, what do I wear? It's like everything all of a sudden. Why am I yawning so much?
That must have really. Some of that would have played on your mind when you were selling things. You must have looked at it. I haven't reached for that in ages.
Yeah,
just being honest.
That's the thinking behind what I've sold, and be honest with you. Stuff that I don't wear, stuff that I don't think about wearing, and then there's some stuff that I've straight up forgot that I had. You know, I was looking through me backup bottles today, and I saw like I've got loads of Serge Lutens backup bottles, and I was thinking I haven't even finished any of my Serge Lutens because while I love them, they're not the easiest things to wear in a lot of situations. You know, and I'm being really like stingy with like what I'm like. Not stingy, I'm being harsh, I'm being ruthless, that's the word. I'm being ruthless with what I can wear and what I can't wear, you know. And what I do wear and what I can keep and what I can't keep. And I've sold some perfumes that I really enjoy and I really like, but I just don't wear them and I never think about wearing them, you know.
When do you feel like you've smelt them, experienced them, done with them?
Yes. There was somebody commented on one of my reviews today, and they were like, "Oh, like one of my old reviews," and they're like, "I can't believe like you've sold this." And I was like, "Well, I mean, that's the thing. Maybe I sold it to you or someone like you who absolutely loved it, you know." And it's like, I don't, and I didn't. I didn't love it. I didn't wear it. I never thought about wearing it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I mean, there's probably things I have, but probably I'm the same. But I always hold on to this. Maybe I'll like it, or maybe I'll crave for it. It's like I've had that bottle of Lonvol for about 4 or 5 years, and I haven't worn it. And I'm always like, maybe I'll like it one day. But I keep saying, I will sell it, or get rid of it, or hand it to someone.
Why did you buy it?
Because I do find it an interesting perfume. I feel like I want to like it more than I like it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And maybe if I was as honest with myself as you have been, I probably wouldn't have it.
Yeah. Hold on a second, Jura Rose. A wild Houdini has appeared. Welcome, James. How you doing?
Hello.
Are you there? I can't hear him. I can't hear you, mate. I can barely hear you.
You can't hear me. Oh, I know I'm such a big
fan.
Can you
There
hear
you
me
go.
now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Is it not plugged in? Shit.
It's plugged in. I can hear you.
Cool.
I can hear
Okay.
you. There you go.
I can hear you.
How you doing?
Oh, okay.
Oh, happy days.
I'm all right. How are you guys doing?
I'm all right. I'm kicking back. I've got a drink. I'm talking to Jura. I'm talking to Houdini. We're just talking about why we buy things and how we come around to selling them. You know.
Well, my lack of.
Oh. Well, you're having a bit of a purge at the moment, aren't you, Rich?
I am having a massive purge at the moment. I've got a perfume enema in, and I'm ridding myself of quite a few perfumes. To be honest, at the minute, it's become less about what I don't wear and more about getting rid of backups of stuff that I've got that I don't need. Like I was telling James today, I've got fucking 8 backups. Well, I haven't. I've got 7 backups of Indo Amber Perfumes.
Wow.
Because
this is the thing, right? There's some perfumes that I will accept you having, and nothing against Amber Pour On because I really like it. It's a really great perfume, but like no one needs 8 of those. No one needs fucking 7 of those. Nobody does, do you?
Well, sort of the thinking was at the time, because this is what we've been discussing, the thinking, the philosophy between buying and selling. So the kind of the thinking was, I smelled the reformulation that was done by L'Oreal, and L'Oreal is where perfume goes to die, and I smelled the reformulation, the grey juice, the grey version of it, and it was so far removed from the Indo Amber Perfumes that I know, that I was like, well, this is never going to come back. There's now a finite amount, and the best time to buy it is now because the prices are as low as they're ever going to be. And so I found somewhere and bought them below retail, and basically just stocked them up. And now the prices have gone up, and I buy backup bottles and bottles of perfume not because I want to make profit on them, but because I don't want to pay the inflated prices when I come to replace them.
I get you.
You know? So it's...
You see, I understand the mentality all too well. You are basically like the little devil on the shoulder, but also the angel in a sense, because like you say, it's actually saving you money in the long run. That's how you got to convince yourself. However, I tend to like block that voice out now and go, no, don't do that. Like you don't need, because effectively, I mean, you're sitting on a fucking goldmine of stuff, aren't you? Really, like you say, you don't do it for that reason, but at the end of the day, they're appreciating in value. So it's not that it's a silly investment; it's actually a very shrewd investment. But I just can't. I just never have that disposable income to be able to go, I'll just have that sat as an investment. Do you know what I mean? Because it doesn't feel like that to me, because I like to use my perfumes, and an excess of perfume, which I do have, by the way, so I can't really talk, but an excess in the way that you're talking about, where you have like tons of backup bottles stashed away, I just couldn't, I can't commit to. I mean, fair dues to you for doing that. But I think even you limiting yourself now to say, look, I've got however many backup bottles of these. I'm never gonna be without this formulation of what I like. You want to let some go, and obviously that's what you are doing. So I think I commend you for that. But it's just how you then reinvest that money, or what you use that money for.
I think it's interesting. Whether I would ask you guys, are you at peace with the terms if you ever used up a bottle of perfume? Like, would you be at peace with the fact that once you get to the end of that bottle, you'll never smell it again? Because I know when you buy backup bottles, what you're really saying is the only time you really own that fragrance is when you don't spray it. Because once you've sprayed it, it's gone. And you have to keep spraying it again, and you keep doing that, and it's gone until it's completely gone. So, I mean, I'm kind of at peace once I finish a bottle, and if I can never smell it again, I'm fine. If I get to smell it again in the future, I'd be happy to, and sort of the memories it bring back.
I am completely at peace with it, because I believe that there's always something around the corner. Now, I know Rich definitely doesn't believe that. But I can, not that I can point to many examples of modern perfumery or things that are new that I can say, oh yeah, that's great. But I really, it's almost that kind of letting go of the fear of missing out. Yeah, letting go of that is very liberating. Even perfumes that I absolutely adore, I could be at peace with smelling them for the last time and then letting them go. So yes, in answer to your question, Jura Rose, I am at peace, and yeah.
So I am and I'm not. I'm kind of in a state of, I'm in a quantum state with that kind of sort of mentality. It definitely appeals to something deep and animalistic in me that I want to squirrel away like lots of things, and I've always done it with everything that I've ever collected or done. It's just part of my mentality, mindset sort of thing, you know. The buying of excess backup bottles and stuff, but fortunately with this I'm not going to lose out on any money, and I do have to go through the process. I'm coming to peace. I don't know that I ever actually reach peace. Like, I'll move on to something else, you know. So with the Prada Amber Pour On, when it got discontinued, I was like, well, it didn't get discontinued. When it got reformulated and I found the license had moved to L'Oreal, I was like, oh shit. I was like, this is absolutely fucking terrible. I can't do without this. And I basically went to get a couple of backup bottles, and I was like, oh, how many have you got? And the guy was like, 6, 5, 6, 7. And I was like, fuck it, I'll take all of them. You know what I mean? Because when I heard that, the little thing in the back of my mind was saying, well, you can get these now at this price, right? And you've got them, and then you've got certainty. So for me, Jura Rose is saying, have you got peace? To me, peace is kind of certainty, you know? And I think once I've made up my mind, a lot of people know this about us, once I've made up my mind, I'm keeping it that way. And I think that I've now made up my mind that I want to sell some stuff off, and I want to spread them out there and sell them and stuff. And it's been good. I've enjoyed doing that so far this year, you know.
Can I ask, because I think, you know, of your collection, I don't know if there was a bit of a lag, and I don't know if this is common for most people, between the point where you actually know you should be selling things and the point where you actually do. So, I mean, would it be the same when you are selling things? Is there a point when you're getting really happy with all this selling, and you go past the point where you should actually have stopped selling, and then you're going to regret selling too much?
That is something that I have to watch out for. I agree, because you can then get addicted to having the money. Because I think it maybe just coming to terms or coming to peace with yourself rather than your perfume collection, you know. And it's my kind of personality to like overstock and overkeep, you know. And hoarding's one way to put, because the thing with hoarding is that hoarders never let go, you know. I don't need external pressure. I find that point myself, and then I start like a binge and purge, you know. That's kind of what I do, you know. So I find that I will binge on stuff for a long time, and then I will reach a point and I'll be like, fucking hell, I've had enough of this, and they've got to go. And then I will reach a point where I'll find like a nice stasis, You know, I'll find a nice balance, a nice place where I am. And I'll just be like, right, fuck it, I'll just maintain that, and I can add a few or I can take a few away. And I kind of feel like I'm in the process of doing that, and this is the latest in a long line of these experiences that I've had. So I'm just, this time I'm doing it on the internet, on YouTube, for the world to see, you know, and it's opened up like conversations between me and other people, you know, lots of people, about the nature of collecting and the nature of habits and personality and philosophies and stuff like that, which is very interesting and conversations worth having, because I've never really had those conversations out loud with other people before.
You derive a lot of pleasure though from your collection in ways that other people perhaps don't, in that you have conversations, you send stuff to people, you kind of almost want to educate people about it. It's not like in a flex in what you've got kind of way. It's more of a, you want people to try these things, and that's very much appreciated. It certainly is by us on the podcast, because there's a lot of things that we wouldn't have access to, which we've been able to get from you. So I think there's more to it than just, because also if the money burns a hole in your pocket and you're like, I know everyone needs money for, you know, if your car breaks down, or, you know, there's lots of different things in life that you need money for, but in terms of your disposable income, if that's what you're most happy doing, is you know, acquiring perfumes, then arguably what else are you going to do with that money? You know, if
Hoard
the most
it.
Well, I suppose, I mean, but there's that. But you're not going to stop buying perfume, are you? No matter how many you sell now, you're not going to stop, are you?
Yeah, exactly. It's definitely a living, breathing thing, and it's something that I want to keep going. Like, I've had people say to us before, like, oh, I remember when you bought Derby, the vintage Derby, and you made this video and said that, like, that was it. You kind of felt like you'd reached like a high watermark in your perfume and you weren't going to buy things anymore. I think they kind of misinterpreted that, or maybe I miscommunicated that. What I kind of meant was that I wasn't going to be reaching for the stars anymore. I wasn't going to be like I bought a 70 bottle haul once. Do you know what I mean? Like, I bought a 70 bottle haul once. That has never happened
That's
again.
mental.
Not even.
That's like twice the size of some people's collections.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is exactly. That's it. Like, and I wasn't going to be doing that kind of like stretching, reaching kind of thing anymore. And I was just going to pick up a few fragrances here and there for things that I'd sampled and tried. And I mean, to be fair, I've already had 3 blind buys this year. I've only bought 4 perfumes and I've had 3 blind buys. But I swore I was going to stop blind buying and stuff like that. And basically the way I tend to do things when I want to curb a behaviour is I will reduce it. And I'll reduce it and reduce it and reduce it, and the trend will always go down. There'll be a couple of bumps, obviously, every once in a while, because that's what I do. But I just want to reduce my intake, you know, and allow other things to come and flourish and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. It's the plan has held as well as I thought it was going to. That change in philosophy from 2022 to now has held as well as I thought it was going to, in that I have sold, I don't know what the exact number is, but I would say it's between 8 and 10. I've sold 8 and 10 bottles for every perfume I've bought since I got that massive bottle of Derby.
Well, that's a good ratio, isn't it?
Yeah, especially because there's a lot of things what I've been doing is I've been reviewing things that I've sold that have left the collection permanently. So I've reviewed like quite a few. I've reviewed Le Male. I had a bottle of Le Male that I received, and I fucking hate Le Male, and I shat all over it when I sold it, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, fuck this, get away from us, I hate you forever. But there's other perfumes that I've sold as well, right, that I haven't reviewed because they haven't actually left the collection. It's just the backups have gone.
Yeah.
You know, like I put up a couple of bottles of Feminité Dubois, the Serge Luton, like vintage one. You know, in the old like a Palais Royal version I put up for sale. A 5 o'clock Eugène Jambre I put up for sale, and a sealed Feminité Dubois, which wasn't Palais Royal but was still the vintage presentation. And I put them up for sale today because I was looking at my Serge Luton backups and I was like, well, I rarely ever wear Feminité Dubois, and when I do, I wear the Shiseido version, you know? So, and I've got a backup of that as well. So I'm basically sitting on these perfumes. It's just like other people could have, that there is a genuine aspect, like Houdini said before. I like sharing the experience with other people, because the good thing about these perfumes is that I can take from my bottle, decant to 3 people like the Les Odorants or Jura Rose, right? And then send it to them, and we can share the experience. They can tell me, we can smell the same thing, and they can tell me what they're getting, and we can have 2 completely different experiences, but be absolutely certain that we're smelling the same thing.
Yeah.
I find that fascinating. I love that. I think the connection is the main part. I've become quite, I don't want to say become quite isolated, because I'm not like stuck on top of a hill like fucking Hannah Hawkswell from the fucking 1980s, where like I've basically become self-sufficient and everybody forgot I existed. I'm not that kind of isolated, but the internet's become a massive part of like my social scene, you know what I mean? And I must admit, I kind of prefer it that way, because going out and doing shit and stuff like that, it's just everything, including cost, you know?
Yeah.
Including cost, it's fucking outrageous. Like,
no, for me, perfume is a great playing field, great springboard to talk to people about different things.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how you can, from just talking about fragrances, the conversations you can sort of get yourself into, and the people you can meet.
Yeah.
I find that nearly on a daily basis, talking to many people, and you can learn a lot. And I mean, you probably find the same with any other hobby, but I think that's how embedded it is in my life. I'm sure you're the same. That it's sort of the lines are blurred between when you're talking about fragrance and then when you're not. It's like it's so intermingled with everything you do. I just want to say Pradeep had a good comment there. Where was it? Imagine if more perfumes were good, we'll all be bankrupt. Yeah, thank God they're all shit. Thank God for shit fragrances.
Just talking about collections and hoarding things, and obviously I know that Jura Rose is into making perfume. Do you find you have the same sort of appetite for materials, as that can become a bit of a trying to acquire all different materials and things can be just as much of a collector's sort of pursuit as buying the perfumes themselves.
Oh yeah, I probably have about 800 materials. And the thing is, for me, you can get samples of things which are handy, and you can sort of evaluate whether you really need something.
Mm-hmm.
But there's always that itch of that one material, what you can do with it.
Yeah.
And then I find if I could resell materials like Rich sells perfumes, I'd say there's many that I would resell.
Yeah. Unfortunately, there's not really a market for it, is there?
No, they just kind of go off, or like, I just chuck them in the bin if you can. But definitely. But I think as a creative pursuit, it's kind of a good thing. It keeps you on your toes. It opens up new horizons. But I mean, that can go from. I mean, I've been on this pursuit of really evaluating whether I prefer Cologne or Cascalone, if that makes sense.
Right.
And I'm undecided, but no one would really care.
What's the difference?
What I want. I mean, you know what Cologne is. It's that sort of aquatic watermelon. It's found in a lot of fragrances, even some of the designer Blue Men's fragrances and stuff. Cascalone is just a bit more crystalline clear, a little bit more powerful. But there's something nice and retro feeling about Cologne that I like as well. So it's hard. It's hard to say which one I prefer, and maybe I don't prefer one over the other, and they have different uses.
Well, that's it. It's interesting that you mentioned the texture of them, because that can be the only difference. You know what I mean? Something can smell so similar to something else, and yet you can utilize it in different ways, and that's why. It's a certain type of person who wants to go down that route of making perfume in the first place. But again, like, you're agonizing over this decision that ultimately some would say doesn't matter, but it does. It makes absolutely all the difference. It depends what kind of perfume you want to make. And that is a whole universe of possibilities that I shy away from, because one, it's a money pit. Two, it's an emotional and time investment and all kinds of things that I want it to be, because it excites me, but I also kind of find it daunting at the same time. And that's kind of why I've sort of jacked it in, to be fair, because you can only have so many hobbies at a time. And that was something that I kind of got really into, and then it sort of overwhelmed me. And I think I'm going to come back to it one day, but I still haven't today.
Yeah.
And I've probably got a load of materials that have, like you say, gone off. They've been sat there, and I'll like go through and evaluate which ones are fucked, and I just have to throw them away, or which ones are okay. And it is that fine line between which kind of even the dreaded amber wood, and sort of woody amber materials and stuff. There's several different ones of those. They all smell pretty awful. They're pretty hardcore, right?
An accent to the head.
But there's different, like you said, there's different ways of kind of utilizing them, and doses and things, and you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, because they can still give really good qualities to perfumes and stuff. So that's fascinating. I know maybe Rich doesn't want to talk too much more about materials, because I'm always fucking going, can we just,
Do you know what? I was literally just about to say, I would be quite happy for you two, right, to have a fucking a conversation during this stream. I was going to ask you both, right, in modern perfume now, right, I want you both to give a material that is widely used in modern perfumery, like these days, right? And since you both have reference to it, like a different material each, and see if you can, between me and the audience, who some people in the audience will know what some of the materials are about, but most won't, and I don't. And getting down into the material aspect of the perfumes isn't something I want to get involved in, but I am interested to hear from people who are in there, trying to explain it to people like me who aren't, how and why these things work, and what they do, and what they've replaced. That's something I'm quite interested in, because obviously I'm a massive vintage junkie. Like perfumes of yore, I love the materials that you just don't smell anymore. There's just some materials that just aren't there anymore. And I'm not just talking about oak moss. There are certain types of patchouli, and there are certain types of fucking there's a myrrh. I think it was James I was talking to. Or it might have been someone else. The myrrh that's in that Prada Amber Pour Homme Intense is the same myrrh that is in Eau Sauvage Parfum 2012. and it's fucking amazing, and it's lovely, but you never smell that myrrh again. You know what I mean? Like, that myrrh, I'm sure it's in other things, but it's just not out there anymore. So where the fuck is it? What happened to it? Was it one batch? Was there something wrong with it? You know, was the person fucking making it fucking, like, killed in some myrrh avalanche or something? You know what I mean? Like, what? Like, what's going on? So, back to what I was saying originally, both of yous give us a material each, right, that is used in perfume widely now, and then I want to hear you two talk to it, because you'll both know what is, like, the material, because it'll be widely used, right, and available, and you can both have it. I don't have
the one I'm thinking of, because it's hard to get at the moment.
Oh, for fuck's sake!
But I have smelled it. I don't know if James would agree with me or not, but Aazelwood, that is the smell of all the big hit in modern perfumery today. And it makes sense. It's a patchouli material, and patchouli really is the backbone of French perfumery. And that's why it's a big building block. Instead of using old-fashioned patchouli or even Clearwood, which is seen as old-fashioned, you can now use this nice sort of hypercrystalline, especially when you look at what Quentin Biche is doing. And he's going for this sort of very futuristic, weird, saffrony, mineralic, you know, heavy on the ambroxan thing. Aazelwood works perfectly in that, and it's something you can build upon. If you put patchouli in there instead, it will just smell a bit more old. And you're literally smelling it everywhere for a reason. And I think the next big one they're using is a thing called Georgie wood. But that's also a captive, which is a little bit newer than Aazelwood, so that won't be released for a lot longer to the general public. I haven't smelt that, but it's supposed to be very icy, supery. So it's these sort of building block molecules when they try and when they make new ones or new types of muguet or lily of the valley materials. That's a big one as well, because these are the sort of things that you'll smell everywhere, because they do the heavy lifting, and you can dress it up in different ways.
It's interesting that you mention Aazelwood, because I've not actually smelled it in isolation. So whenever my fellow odorants go on about, I fucking hate that Aazelwood, blah blah blah, and I've said to them, look, have you smelled it in isolation? Because I don't think that what you're smelling I don't think the thing that is offending you about Quentin Biche's latest perfume, or let's say those what's he called? Those Antoine Barrois.
Oh God, the Marc Antoine Barrois, yeah, like D693, like the fucking slip road from fucking working it or something.
I don't think it's an elegant, modern patchouli note that is offending you, right? I think it's other stuff, right? And that like pitchy kind of resinous smell. I don't think it's the Aazelwood, but I don't know, and I'm kind of. I'll admit I've not smelled it, right? There is another material, and there was like some kind of base or something that someone was saying, because it's still a captive, isn't it, Aazelwood?
Well,
is that right?
Not for long.
Well, yeah, but it still is technically.
Yeah,
now,
I think so.
it?
Yeah.
I know some people have got hold of it, you know, but I mean, how did you get hold of it?
I smelt it. I was actually in the Givaudan offices last year.
Well, there you go then. They you know, that's so you're smelling legit stuff. But there's supposed to be, is it rotundone or rotundolide or some kind of that was supposed to be very similar?
No, I for me it was comparable to Clearwood, because it's the patchouli that's getting cleaner, but for me it's more sharp and peppery.
So, okay, so when people say that to me, I can picture what that is, right? Because I'm very familiar with Clearwood, and I would say, how is that offending you in any perfume? Right? You know, I think that's, and I'd go, if it's Clearwood but it's a little bit stronger and got a little bit more character, great. Like, that sounds like a wonderful material that I would love to have, because you can utilize Clearwood, and usually I would use it to kind of space out and you know, put a bit of real patchouli oil in there, and then maybe use the Clearwood as to sort of extend it a bit or something. But like you say, it's very different to using just natural patchouli, because that would get smell very old and, like you say, kind of dated. Whereas things with Clearwood are quite modern, for want of a better term. And I think Aazelwood, like I say, it sounds wonderful to me. And I smell perfumes with it in and go, yeah, I could get there's a patchouli note in there, and it smells great. But I don't see how that is as triggering to people as I understand why they don't like the that what he did for Essential Perfumes or some of these Barwa ones. But I think that's other materials that's making it loud and screechy and annoying. Yeah, combination, exactly.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Clearwood, I think it's one of those things, if you put it in front of anyone's nose in isolation, for example, they'll think that's lovely. It's a lovely material. It's like if you smell a lot of things. I mean, there's only one material that's really repulsed me, and it's cis-4-heptanol. I don't know if you've ever tried that. It's rotten. It smells like rotten garlic, like rancid potatoes, and it's just heavy, warm, hot, steamy. It just, repulsive. But that's the only thing that's really, really repulsed me in terms of materials. I mean, everyone has their sort of. I think even perfumers would have their taste, and there's materials they prefer over others. And,
sure.
Like I'm not the biggest fan of saffron. I have it, and I see it as it's very useful in leather accords and and other things. But I wouldn't reach for it. I don't desire it. It's not something I love to smell.
No.
And that's fine. If someone gets repulsed by a certain smell, they have many reasons to hate a certain smell. It's a very personal thing. I agree with the. Yeah, sorry.
Sorry to interrupt. But speaking of Prada Amber, for example, the Prada Amber Pour Homme, I get quite a prominent saffron note, let's say, right? From that. Do you think that's saffroline?
I haven't smelt it.
Oh, okay. So
No.
we were talking about that perfume. Again, I think it's quite mild, and I know what you mean about saffroline. By the way, I hadn't smelled it for quite a long time. It was one of the sort of later materials, so I do remember smelling it because I do like saffron, particularly. I do like natural saffron. It's one of the naturals that I think is actually really great. But yeah, I don't recall particularly liking the saffroline and thinking, okay, I know where that sort of slightly cheap saffron smell comes from in certain, like you say, leather accords and stuff like that. But it can be useful, and again, it depends how you use it. And I often think you might, like you're going on about this horrible rancid material. That must exist for a reason. It's probably not just your perception of it that it's horrible. It might be that thing of a little bit of something horrible just gives another accord a real edge and makes it kind of beautiful.
Yeah,
maybe.
I agree. I mean, there was that L'Artisan Perfumer line they released about two years ago. It was the sort of vegetable ones they were doing.
Yeah.
I can imagine that material I hate being used there in small amounts. But I have to say, I smelt it in 1% dilution, and it was absolute. It's one of those materials, James, you have to pack 5 times, and you can still smell it leaking out.
Yeah,
and it's. I think it's just the strength of it was not helping its cause. I think everything has. I've had this whole conversation about fruits and flowers, and why people say something doesn't smell convincing, and it's usually because the dirty bits aren't there.
Yeah,
and it's an old story, and everyone knows the Edmund Ranitska and looking for the the lily of the valley smell, and adding indole, that poopiness. But it goes for most fruits. Most fruits are a bit dirty and rancid, and when you take that away, it just doesn't smell right. And I think that's why perfume needs, for me, it needs something, especially something to sort of anchor it to the skin. And the perfumes that I really love and I would buy, they always have something. It's just a little bit warming to it.
Yeah.
Whether it's the musk accord, I like, for example, chocolate. The smell of chocolate actually has a slight dirtiness to it, natural chocolate. And when you take away that dirtiness from it, it doesn't really smell like chocolate anymore. It's like just like a sweet floral, you'd say balsamic smell.
Yeah.
So
Have you
yeah,
used the natural cacao? You know, the stuff that's kind of solid at room temperature. So it's a bit of a bastard to to work with. But that stuff smells phenomenal.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I've got a cacao CO2 extraction. And for me, it's, if I was ever to make a Castoro accord, that's going to be used in there. Because it has that chocolatey, and it's slightly animalic. It's a little bit poopy, but it's that smoothness to it as well. You could say a little bit leathery. So you can see why traditionally civet notes were used in honey accords and stuff like that, because it needs them.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is something absolutely like animalic, disgusting about honey. You know, while it's sweet and floral and airy and light, and there's lots of different kinds. You need that kind of yin and the yang kind of vibe. You know, that little dot of the other in it to make it so that it's not just some flaccid blob. You know, to give it some structure, to give it some contrast, some juxtaposition, like some backbone. You know, some spine.
One of my favorite perfumers. You're not the biggest fan of this brand, but Rich, I know. But Parfum d'Empire, so the perfumer behind that, Marc-Antoine Corticchiato, for me is a real expert when I smell his stuff, of really understanding all the parts of the different accords that he's using. So the different flowers. So say there's a fragrance. One of my favorite releases last year was his last one for them, Un Bel Amour d'été. And when I smell it, it has like a magnolia, champaca, gardenia, tuberose. It has some spices in there: turmeric, cumin, sandalwood, vanilla, amber. Now, if you was just to pack this all in together as a bunch of accords, it would actually smell like a mess. But the way he balances and he understands the overlap, it's a bit like a Venn diagram where certain materials, certain notes overlap, and knowing how to dose them. And so it creates an overall effect, and it is a sum of its parts. But actually, it's a very complicated fragrance, and that's why when you wear it and the more you understand it, you realize how beautifully complex it is and how well put together. And for me, that's real masterful perfumery. It's not just making accords and making them fit. It's actually where they overlap and knowing how to dose those overlapping bits. So it becomes one whole thing, but it's really full and round, and there's different areas you can explore. That for me is that's top level perfumery. And I can think of all the examples of my favorite fragrances that do that. Like Le Bleu for me does that as well. You know, it was, I know people talk about being an iris and a tonka bean, but then there's this whole big orange blossom note in there, and there's the heliotrope bit, but they kind of sort of blend together, and they're not obvious when they're together. But the more you smell it, you realize it's all fits together in a very enigmatic but very well thought out way. That for me is the true genius of perfumery, and that's where it should all aspire to be. I think there's a lot of lazy perfumery lately, and things just smell rushed, and you can kind of see it, and things aren't put together as well as they could be.
That's something that I keep commenting on, especially about indie perfume. It feels incomplete. It feels like it feels like to me when I smell indie perfumes that what they've done is that they've taken the first few baby steps, right, or they've managed to stand up in perfume, and they understand a couple of notes, and they've put them together, and they thought, fucking hell, that smells nice, this is really easy, I'm going to put this in a bottle and sell it. You know, like, I'm a genius. That's what it smells like, what a lot of these indie perfumers have done. A lot of the stuff I smell feels raw, it feels unfinished, it feels rushed, it feels the opposite of fine perfume, you know, like really sharp perfume. It's the opposite of that. It's at the bottom end of the wedge. It's fat, it's wide, it's kind of broad, it's nondescript. It does it doesn't have a shape. It doesn't have any coherence. You know, it smells like someone strumming a guitar, but not only is the guitar out of tune, but all the strings are in the wrong places. So your bass string is like on your it's like playing a left-hand guitar with your right hand. Do you know what I mean? Like everything is out of sync and out of place, and it's one of my major issues with the explosion of perfume, in that you get a lot of people who think, I'm going to go into the shed and I'm going to knock up a couple of chemicals and I'm gonna have like this kind of like hero of your own story vibe, where I think, fucking hell, I've done rather well there, haven't I? Everybody else will like this, put it out there, and it's actually not very good, you know? And it really doesn't compete when the bar is so high. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's, for me, a lot of the, like you said, Jura, a lot of the perfumes that are out and about now are really, like, poor.
I know you're saying about indie perfumers, but I think that even goes for your big house perfumers.
Yeah, designer perfumes as well. Yeah, I was just about to say, sorry, I was literally just about to say, that kind of lowering of the bar seems to have allowed houses, fucking name any of the big designer houses now who contract out their perfumes. They're basically just being allowed to say, here's 3 fucking materials, here's 10 materials, right? We've put them together. Doesn't that smell nice? The computer says yes. We'll put it out there. You know? Like, that's what it smells like. That might not be the case. There might have been a lot of thought and a lot of science gone into it, but that's not the way it smells, you know?
Yeah,
you it's say something, James.
Perfume is...
No, sorry. I'm actually looking through Parfum d'Empire, because I remember trying some of that brand, and there should be some fucking reviews on here, but I can't find a single review, so I can't remember. And that probably doesn't bode very well for, you know, if I can't remember a perfume. But I'm just looking at like Musk Tonkin. Like, I'm sure I probably like that.
Well, the thing is, Jura Rose said that I didn't really like them. It's not that I didn't really like them, I just didn't feel they were for me. I thought they were good quality. I thought they were well made. I enjoyed them, but it's nothing that I wanted to wear. I've got Amber Rousse, and even then, I think the thing is, for me, with Parfum d'Empire, is that I always found something in them that I didn't like, and I didn't like to the extent that I wasn't willing to spend money on it. You know? I like Amber Rousse. Sorry?
He uses a lot of Indol. Amber Rousse has a big Indol note in there. And I know you don't like Indol. If you smell Amber Rousse, there is an Indol note in there.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise us, actually. I mean, I never wear that, to be honest, but I do actually really like it, you know? I do actually really like it. What I wanted to say to James, what's a material now that's used widely in perfume that you smell, that you recognise, that is out there? Basically do what Jura Rose has just done about like a Kegler would, as my Nicholas used to say.
I'd probably say, and again, it's one that I don't really like, which is even more fascinating, to be honest, because I think, like exactly like how we were saying, like, you know, I know Jura understands this, that you accept that there's things that might not smell nice, even at a certain concentration. Do you know what I mean? It's like if you try it at 1%, you might try it at 0.1%, and you might go, oh, it's actually got a slight different quality now, and it's not as, you know, horrible as it was. There is a material, and it's strange because it is pretty widely used, and actually I've seen quite a lot of it in recent perfumes. It's Amber Arome.
Oh, okay.
Which, what do you think of that, Jura?
I don't actually have it, but I remember smelling it. I know it's used a lot for. It's the labdanum derivative, isn't it?
Labdanum, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah,
actually derived from labdanum oil, but the things that they kind of take out or whatever actually give it a very animalic character. So it gives it much more. It kind of pulls more of the sort of animalic aspect of it, which is actually a little bit like ambergris in that strange kind of way. It's
Yes.
almost like kind of saliva on skin, like it's slightly slightly icky, little bit kind of halitosis breath, but surrounded by this thing that is beautiful and sweet. And I don't mean sweet in the kind of, you know, ethyl maltol vanillin type way. I mean sweet in the way that labdanum oil to me has a sweetness, but it also has loads of other facets and qualities and things. It still has that, but like it's this odd, slightly animalic, like I say, icky, human. Well, not even human, just animal quality to it that I really don't like. And the thing is, I accept as well that it can be used in an accord brilliantly, and it can. They might even have a preference for using that as using the labdanum oil, because they don't want that sweetness, they don't want that characteristic labdanum, but they want aspects of what that gives. And an example would be there's a new perfume from Amouage that is so recent that people may not have tried it, but it was in that trio, and I think one of the a Guerlain named person.
Oh, Paul Guerlain.
Yes, possibly. Actually collaborated with maybe Bertrand Duchefort, was it? No. I'll have to have a look. Hang on. I've got
Julian
it here.
Rascanet, is it?
Oh, Julian Rascanet. Sorry, it is. It's
I think so.
Luster. It's called.
Yeah.
Have you smelled that?
No, I haven't. I haven't actually smelt the last probably 5 Amouage releases. I can't keep up. To be honest.
I mean, the price alone would just completely turn me off. However,
is it called Luster?
Luster, yeah. I fucking loved it. Absolutely loved it. And that lists Amberome as, you know, a prominent material, and yeah, it really is. When I first smelled it, I was like, oh, this is a kind of powdery sort of rose. It's kind of you know, doing other things. Yes, it's obviously resinous, and it's got this lovely, like, creamy kind of resin sort of base to it. But then when I actually wore it on my skin, it was a totally different experience again, from smelling it on strips and smelling it even on my wrist. When I actually wore it for a day, I was like, wow, this is so dominant in this labdanum, but it must be the amber arome, and it's the way that it's utilized in this perfume. I absolutely love it. Absolutely love it. I thought it was fantastic. It was like musky and warm and just beautiful. But again, that's a material that I would smell straight out of the thing and go, I don't like that. There's something almost, it's kind of like almost has like top notes, like a very heady, oh, it's labdanum straight away. And then there's this little, it sort of declines a little bit, and you go, oh, actually, there's a slight after thing that's not very pleasant. And again, that can appeal, that can be useful. That's what's fascinating. That element of perfumery really fascinates me, that there can be things that I can go, I hate the smell of this in concentration, it's disgusting, but it's really handy for this, that, and the other, and whatever. And I think that's wonderful.
Yeah. Do you know, I see a lot of people mentioning honey notes. There's a fragrance I smelled recently. I don't know if you guys ever tried Vivienne Westwood's Boudoir?
No, I've heard of it.
I have, yes.
That one, that has a really nice honey note in the dry down. I mean, it does start off a bit like, you know, Parfum de Hermès, that sort of aldehydic, rosy. You think it's going to go in that sort of chypre, ambery way. But the honey note in that's really nice in the dry down. So for the people who are looking for honey notes, if you can get your hands on even a little small amount of that, try it. And the material that gives that sort of feeling is phenethyl phenylacetate, which is a really nice material, which I love. And it really sort of gives the sort of floral honey. It's one of those materials you can make a very simple honey accord with it. It's really convincing.
Yeah.
So with a touch of vanillin or coumarin, just to give that sort of honey feeling.
So
But
just that material with
get that
addition
material and then a little bit of vanillin,
yeah.
and you can get quite close to a really good honey accord there.
Isn't that amazing that, you know, some things can be so simple as well? Just
Yeah.
one material and you can just go, right, okay, I'll just put a little bit of something else with it, and already, you know, you've got yourself a simple accord. That's another bit of the sort of magic of it. Speaking of Hermes, right, weirdly, this is not bullshit, right? I came in here before and I sort of knocked the cupboard door open while I was setting my computer up and stuff, and this Hermes bag just like fell out, right? And I heard it kind of clinking, and I was like, oh, it's like clinking in the bottom. And I remember the last time I went to an Hermes shop, and I bought a perfume, obviously. They gave me some samples, and I don't know what the samples are. So let's...
Their samples are really good as well. They're like 4 mil.
Yeah, look at the size of that. What have they given me? They have given me Cedra Sambac.
Oh, lovely one.
What else?
They've given me 2. What's the other one? Poivre Samarcande, which is a kind of peppery one, is it?
Do you know that one, Jura?
I've tried it. I've tried all of them. I don't have the Poivre. Cedra Sambac I have. That's nice.
Ooh, yes, it's
That's actually, again, it's Cedra Sambac is one I hear a lot of people, you know, bad mouth and Christy Nug. Oh, look, I mean, Barinia's not great, but we'll forget that. A lot of people
I thought
bad
you'd
mouth
quite
it,
like
but
Barinia.
no, I mean, my sister loves it. Funny enough.
Okay. That's an Akajala.
Maybe she ruined it for me. No, I'm joking.
One, isn't it? Isn't that an
Yeah.
Akajala wood sort of
But
based
for me,
one?
for me, the Akigala wood isn't the bit that stands out. The bit I like in that fragrance is the oak wood.
Right.
I really smell the oak wood in that, and I actually think that's done nicely.
Yeah.
Which is, oak wood's a lovely material.
Oh, oak wood is beautiful. Like, I honestly think that's one of the things that you could... most people will like the smell of that. It's like booze soaked into a barrel, isn't it? It's kind of like woody booze. It's just, it's stunning.
Yeah, it's lovely. It is lovely. And to be honest, I know it's listed as a note, so it's not even just the power of suggestion. It's there. For me, it's a nice accord built around that. For me, the Akigala wood thing, it's just doing patchouli's work in there. It's nothing. It's nothing that annoys me at all. For me, it's just a little on the sweet side for me, for my own taste. And the thing is, sweetness. I mean, sweetness doesn't. It's a very personal thing. You know, you could show someone a fragrance and they go, "Oh, that's really sweet," and you're like, "No, it's not." But you're neither wrong nor they neither wrong, because it depends on what you associate with that taste of sweetness of the smell. You know, if you grew up eating licorice candies your whole life, the smell of licorice will be sweet to you because you have that association of sugar. For me, Barinia is just, I don't know, there's something very sugary sweet about it that just puts me off, especially in the air.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think it's a great perfume, but I wasn't as, I mean, like Fliss fucking hated it, right? And I was like,
I must admit, I didn't care for it either.
I can't understand how it can evoke that much emotion. Yes, it's pretty bland, it's not great. There's nothing that really stands out. I actually thought it was quite sort of elegant. It's quite, all right. It's kind of floral sort of accord. It's okay. It's not my bag because it's probably too crudely feminine. Do you know what I mean? I'm saying that in a sort of, as somebody who wears anything, but even still, some things tip over a balance where I go, no, that's, it's not, it's pointless for me to wear that. There's no impact to it. And it's what I would consider on the feminine side. Just smelling this this Poivre Samarcande. Poivrol, that is a material, isn't it?
Oh, lovely. Yeah, it is. Yeah.
I think this has the kind of that sort of top kind of note of that. So it's
it's a
almost slightly
material.
sweaty, but like black pepper, maybe virgin on cumin. Again, that could be other materials that's in this perfume. But speaking of those kind of ones, are you familiar with Kingdom, the Alexander McQueen?
Yeah.
Do you like that one?
Big cumin. Well, to be honest with you, I kind of like cumin. Cumin's a big thing for me. I really enjoy cumin.
Yeah.
That's a great one. And that's another one a bit like the Boudoir. It's kind of like a bit of a unicorn, I think, now. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a great one.
I had it at one time. I've used it a long time ago. It's... I tried to buy it again. I thought about buying it a couple of times, and I've been very close and then gone, nah. And then I bought a decant. I think I bought 10 ml a couple of years ago, and I actually spilled some of it in my car. But I did wear it, so I wore most of it, but I spilled the rest. And I was kind of like, again, I can let that go. It's a wonderful perfume. I mean, it's dead musky. It's really quite strange. I mean, really, for like mainstream perfumery, that is an oddball perfume. Would you not agree?
Yeah, and actually, the time it was released as well. In the context, it was.
It's kind of niche. Niche kind of exploding.
Yeah.
And then informing the mainstream, as we've said, it probably has. And I think that's what is really interesting about that. Like, you would really stand out if you chose that in the fucking early 2000s or whenever it came out. So yeah, I mean, there are other time and a place, and you think, what is to stop a brand doing that now? Really standing out, because they could still do it.
Yeah.
I think,
Yeah. Well, I've had this conversation. I think it's a lack of good creative directors. Like, for me, I think there's a sort of a big thing promoting perfumers and in-house perfumers, and it's a sad thing, but not everyone's Mathilde Laurent or Jean-Claude Elena.
Yeah.
And even they had people working with them, and behind the scenes, and everyone's going, okay, tell me a famous creative director, and I can never think of them off my head when I'm put on the spot.
Yeah.
But
Pierre Bourdon's father.
Yeah, but you can always trace good releases, because it works very different to having an in-house perfumer. You have a creative director, and then they put out a brief, and look, it's brutal, putting out a brief and people competing. But when there's an idea and people competing for that idea, and you find the best person that brought that idea to reality, I would find that you'd have more creativity in the end product, surely, if the briefer is a bit more creative. But when you have an in-house perfumer, you can get a little bit conservative, unless the in-house perfumer has like a really distinct style, and they've given like complete freedom, which I don't think many in-house perfumers do. I think there's an illusion that they have this freedom. I'd like to know how much freedom Francis Kirkland actually does have, for example, or is there actually accountants over his head saying that we need this, and I don't know.
This is part of the discussion where us as fans and people on the outside, we really don't know. We can hazard a guess, but we really don't know what's driving. Well, it's driven by money ultimately, but we don't know why these decisions are going to. It's all speculation. That's why I kind of think it's not pointless engaging in it, because it's interesting to talk about and think about. But we're never going to get a satisfactory answer unless you're an insider or somebody who really knows these things. And I doubt there's many people who do.
Do you think that with the advent of perfumers giving talks, and because I was talking to somebody the other day, who went to a talk with Jean-Christophe Herault, and he said that Olivia Creed never told him that he couldn't take credit for Aventus, and that Olivia Creed basically said it was like a partnership sort of thing. He also said there was never any ambergris in Aventus. Now, do you think that with the advent of these people giving shoot interviews where they go out and they tell the truth about what's really going on behind the curtains and stuff like that, do you think we'll get closer to knowing about the ins and outs of modern perfumery?
Yes and no. I mean, there's a lot of who released a book recently. What's her name? Who worked for Guerlain? What was her name? Sylvine Delacourt.
Yes.
She released a book, and it was supposed to be like all the inside information of the industry. But most people in this chat, when you read it, you'd flick through the pages going, know that, know that, know that, know that. So there seems to be a lot told that we already know, if that makes sense. Because actually, when it gets to the nitty-gritty, dark details, I don't think many people would say a lot of the things.
Do you think that's because the fear for the future of their careers or their prospects, or
possibly? Possibly, or people just don't deem it that important. They don't realize there's actually a demand for people to learn about this thing. I don't know.
You see, I mean, Christophe Laudermiel's made a big song and dance about this, about how the industry takes the piss out of basically everybody for money, which is kind of like being upset that fucking porn stars would have sex for money. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of like that's literally what they're there for. They're literally there to make money, but I think that the balance has tipped too far one way, away from creativity, away from interest, away from. I mean, you can extend this out to other industries as well, but we're talking about perfume. It's like there's been like a pincer movement of there being accountants on one side and regulations on the other, which have kind of squeezed both the palette and the outlook on, like, I mean, they kind of would think of it as being like more refined, as in they've refined their business practice, like they've kind of narrowed it down to where they've got like focus groups and data sets, and they can pinpoint that people like this and they don't like that, and this sells. But what it's done is it's destroyed plurality. That's kind of my biggest concern at the minute about where we're at, about perfumes, smells and everything. We've got the illusion of choice. You look at L'Oreal, right? I'll just take L'Oreal because they're fucking, I hate them for what they do to perfumes, but like, they own YSL. Well, they've got the license for YSL. Kering, who actually own YSL and produce fragrances of their own, don't own the license for that. That's got to be a bit of a kick in the tits. Fucking, they've got YSL, they've got Prada, right? They've got these houses, and what they do, right, is that they use a Givaudan, they use an IFF, they use a Simrise, right? So you've got basically, we've gone from a situation where I've got vintage Calvin Klein's where it says it was made by Calvin Klein Cosmetics. Now, Calvin Klein Cosmetics could have been a factory in fucking France, Italy, Switzerland, wherever, right? And they would buy materials off loads of different houses and put them all together. Now everybody's using these fucking these ever decreasing pools of materials that are available to them, because they've got to use their own captives. They can't pick and choose from different houses, different perfumes and stuff, because they've streamlined their what am I thinking? What's the word? Where you get it's not revenue sources, it's your where you get your products from. You know, they've streamlined where they get their fucking materials from, right? And they've also got this other fucking factor, which is like they've got so many data sets which basically point them in another direction. They've become too focused that there's no kind of room there for creativity to do something different, to do something new, you know. So we're being squeezed from both sides as the consumer, and you're being given the choice. I'm convinced now that we don't buy perfumes, we buy bottles. We buy bottles as art rather than the actual juice that's inside them. The juice that's inside them is the least creative part.
Do you know that I'm going to play devil's advocate a little bit here when it comes to the captive things. I think a big driving reason behind using captives, of course, there's the whole money side of using it. You produce it and you can make money off actually, being in bottles for another niche house. But there's a big issue of cloning and, people copying each other's work. And for example, if you're using a St. Georgie wood, that new Givaudan material, overdosing that in a fragrance, and it's really doing a lot of the work, and it gives it its unique texture, smell, performance, whatever. It would be very hard for a clone house to copy that or the idea without having that material, and that's partly what's useful. Does that make sense? So that's how they see it as well.
Yeah, I think that is a incredibly valid point, because, and also, why shouldn't companies have IP? Every company strives to protect their intellectual property, and why should it be any different for perfume? In fact, even more so in the environment of formulas not being considered art. They're considered a mixture of things that anybody can nick, and it's the same way that somebody could copy a recipe by some famous chef or whatever, but can you execute it as well? And all those sort of questions. And obviously it takes skills to interpret the GCMS analysis and things like that. So I really don't. I think captives are cool, right? And I kind of think that the mystique of keeping certain things away from even me as a hobbyist perfumer, who would be like, I'd love to get my hands on some Aazelwood or whatever, but I can't. Sorry, you can't have it. Right? There's something that I don't have a problem with that.
It's not a new thing in perfume. If you go back 100 years, different houses would have their own sort of floral blends that they'd keep guard. They'd guard it like a secret in a safe, and no one else will actually putting in there. There has to be because it's a very. It was always a competitive market. It's even more competitive now.
Well, this is it. The conversation and the transparency exists now, whereas it didn't at one time. Yeah. Well, certainly it was less widespread. But with the advent of clones or people trying to make their own brands, which was a subject of a Less Odorance episode, which hasn't come out yet. But the first one back, we were talking about Brooks' post about there being lots of, too many releases, basically. And yeah, so that was part of that that sort of conversation.
Yeah, I don't think the creativity in perfume's dead. Out of all them thousands of releases, there's some really good perfumes in there that we probably all of us haven't smelled. That. I think that's the frustrating part, is that it's maybe it's too much for us to handle, and it's a bit like being hit by a truck.
Yeah.
That's very different to being hugged by someone. Do you know what I mean? They're both contact, and I think it's a little bit overwhelming. Look, is there too much perfume being released? Well, if there's more people in the market, more creativity going on, you can argue that no, it's just deal with it.
Yeah.
If there's lots of great books being written, you're not going to say stop writing books, people. That's just a fact, and sadly, you won't be able to smell it all. I actually think in many ways perfume is getting more creative because there's more options. There are definitely more materials that we can use. I know there's a lot of restrictions, but there's a lot more things.
Yeah.
Even naturals, there's a lot more naturals we can use and better quality naturals.
And extraction methods, like you're saying, like CO2 was never really...
Yeah.
And it certainly wasn't available to your hobbyist perfumer, and now you can get those CO2 extracts. I mean, you could even do it yourself if you wanted to.
Yeah.
There's that guy who we spoke about on the boat. The guy on the boat. What do you think about him, Jura?
I remember listening to that episode. I was talking. Did I mention it to you, Rich? I can't remember. Was I talking to you about it? But I quickly Googled this guy because you mentioning Roger jackets, and I thought this sounds like an interesting man. I looked into him. I don't know too much about him. I don't know how I'd feel about doing extractions on a boat. But yeah, if he's doing it, good for him.
Yeah, what I said. I mean,
I reckon he's a great host for a dinner using all his tonka bean extractions.
Didn't he do bread or something? He did like a croissant, and I remember Fliss was texting me going, "You can't extract a croissant." And I was like, "Why not? Why not? If he wants to extract a croissant, let him do it." And she was like, "No, but surely that would just be butter, wouldn't it?" And I was like, "Just he's doing his thing. He's trying." I was actually quite like, "That's fucking cool."
Can he do a strawberry tart? That is the question.
He's gonna stick Jura Rose in one of those tubes and extract him. That's gross. He's I just thought the perfumes were shite personally. And it felt like shtick, if I'm being honest, and I kind of feel like 10 years ago we what did we do? We played host to Roger Bird and his machinations and his shtick, and I've no desire to relive that, especially when the perfumes smell like what those Valenzas smelled like. I just thought they were starchy, and they smelled like socks, and they smelled like perfume sprayed on worn socks, and they were just clunky, and I just didn't think they were very good.
The thing is with weird extractions, like a croissant extraction, is like you could give it to, he could make a perfume out, and it's going to be weird and not right. You give that to, say, Pierre Bourdon, and you say, look, what are you going to do with this? And he'd probably put in such a small amount of Dranit or dihydromercenol. You'd be like, I can't have too much of that,
Yeah.
It's what
which
can you
kind
do
of
with
defeats
it?
the purpose, doesn't it, of the whole thing. So it's very weird. And if you had a material that arguably it doesn't work as a prominent, as a main feature of a fragrance, then you think, well, there's no real point in it then. Again, it might be something that works in tiny amounts and gives a certain quality. That's okay. But if it's something, like you say, that's just in there for the sake of it, to go, oh, I've got this extraction, or I've got this natural at this level because I want to be able to frame this perfume as some kind of opulent thing, but you can't really smell it, what's the point?
Yeah. Well, do you know Christophe Lorimer? Someone mentioned him. I have one of his fragrances. It's a weird one called Club Design. It's from the Zoo.
Oh, yeah.
And that's an overdose of this material I think he's using, allegedly, benzothiazole. I don't know if you smelt that. It's a weird sort of rubbery... It's got that sort of weird latexy, rubbery smell. And
I'm familiar with Club Design. There's another fragrance that he did. Is Club Design the one that is actually not supposed to put on skin?
Yes, which I put on skin, but it's
Yeah, I put it on
yeah,
skin as well.
yeah.
Fuck it.
Yeah, it's Scent Tattoo, I think, is the skin one.
Scent Tattoo is the other one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that has as much of it in it. But the
It
club
was
design,
something. I remember him saying, yeah, it was that because he overdosed that, and it's deliberately over the levels because he said you to spray it on your fucking curtains or whatever.
I'll
But
spray it on your curtains, Rich.
Ooh. Get away from my curtains.
so yeah, it's. I've just got an image of you
Of my curtains.
spraying Rich's curtains.
Yes, mincing through the night. Spray me curtains.
Anyway, yes, I think it is that material because he's quite transparent. He discusses without showing his formulas or what. I think he has shown some of the formulas, but yeah, I think he does mention that material because I think is it banned in Canada or somewhere or some shit like that?
Oh, it could be. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah.
The Canadians. Can they use Castoro? I don't think they can they?
No, they can't. That's
No.
and I believe is that a component of Castoro?
I'm not sure. It might be.
I
know.
think it is.
Yeah. It could be. I'm trying to think. Because the reason why I'm asking, I do think Canada produces a lot of Castoro, but they can't use it. There's some weird thing.
Yeah,
They've got all the
beaver in
beavers.
Canada.
Fucking
Yeah. All them Canadian beavers.
Big Canadian beaver.
beaver juice. Where's the right? Let's have what's it called? Club design. I'm sure there's a little blurb. If it still
Oh yeah.
exists somewhere.
I remember reading that blurb. It's very Christophe Laudemel. It's like written in his language.
Yeah,
You can only read it in his voice,
Twist 1. The exact same fragrance as Scent Tattoo 692, just presented under a different concept and label. Excuse me. You will feel they are different and will prefer one. Twist 2. Sold as a clothing spray as opposed to a skin fragrance because it exceeds somewhat the recommended the upper recommended limit for skin use for saffronal and coumarin.
Oh,
A note
saffronal.
from the brand. There you
So
go.
what's the difference between saffroline and saffronal?
Not too much. I mean, they are a little bit different. For me, I think they're different producers. I can't remember. I think saffroline is Givaudan. I don't know who makes saffronal. Is it IFF or Firmenich?
I can find out.
I have saffroline. There's only so many saffroline derivatives I can have in my life.
Right. Are they so similar that they become pointless?
Some of
I'm
them
sure
do.
not. I'm sure some people will find a difference and prefer one or the other. Because there's a thing as well. Different producers, they produce things at different purity levels as well,
Yeah.
which can be quite important.
There will always be, an argument for a preference for one or the other, but sometimes you can go, look, for all intents and purposes, you can replace certain materials if you don't have something like, let's say you get a formula from somewhere, and there are something that is there or thereabouts. But it could also make all the difference. And you make a perfume and go, oh, I'll replace that. And it has none of the character that you'd expect. So it can make a huge difference. It can make next to no difference. I think when you get things that are basically the same molecule but made by different companies, then again, it sometimes doesn't make any odds at all. Let's have a look. It doesn't say who makes it, which is odd, isn't it? Because you think it would.
It's the same as sandalwood materials. I get them mixed up. Who makes them? and which ones are the same, and because they have so many, there's the same molecule but under different names. Like what do you call it?
Because these are
Ebenol
all
and
things that
Bacanol.
were previously or potentially have been captives
Yeah.
that have then every other company's been able to, it's like a drug coming off patent or whatever. Every fucker starts making them and calls them, some slight different tweak on the name ibuprofen. It might be fucking Nurofen or whatever. It's exactly the same concept. So sometimes you can have identical, exactly the same material, but it's got a completely different name and it's just made by a different company.
Saffron is also Givaudan.
Oh, okay.
So they're both Givaudan materials.
Which would indicate that they are
a little bit different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So what is a material that has been banned that you would like to see come back? James?
I think
It can be for any reason.
either Lirol or Liliol.
Oh, you took mine.
Sorry, I thought you might. Yeah. The reason being is because it's very useful for lots of different, and certainly like floral accords and things like that, as a kind of almost this sort of. Again, it can do a lot of heavy lifting, a lot of work in there, and it really gives a lot of character to many perfumes. But yeah, sorry about that, because I could probably say musk ketone or other kind of some of those like nitro musks and stuff like that, which I have got, but I know I'm not sort of able to use them, which is an odd thing, isn't it? That you can still get some of these materials, but you can't put them in a perfume. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to have to think. So I agree with Lilial especially because it's such a strong component of many of the sort of I love Champaca Absolute, and Lilial is a big part of that.
Right.
And it is partly why it smells so good for me. I would say there's one that I'm sad it's gone, not because it's banned, but because it's been discontinued, and it's called Apolite. It's a musk.
Oh yeah.
I actually really love it, and I bought a load of it, and this is only after I bought it I found out it's been discontinued, and I was just like, why? I think I like my sort of fruity top note musks.
Do you like the Helvetalide then? Or Habanalide, is it? No, Helvetalide.
Habanalide, it has its uses, but I'm not always drawn to it.
Yeah, it's the Helvetalide that's got the pear kind of top note, is it? Yeah.
I mean, Shangri-La, I like Muscanone. I love ethylene brassylate. I love those types of musks that have more warmth to them. Galaxolide is boring, but it's a great musk.
Yeah.
Whipping through the bits.
I love the ethylene brassylate. Ooh.
It's actually a very complex musk for me, ethylene brassylate. There's part of it seems quite fresh, spicy, but there is a warmth to it as well.
Yeah. I think it's associated with a fresher, certainly used with like citrus and stuff like that, where it's kind of like, well, yeah, there's a lot of character to it. Yeah, I really like that one.
And another material that I think will be banned soon, that I would be very sad to see go, is hydroxycitronellol.
Why will it be banned?
Well, there's a few perfumers are not using it as much out of, they know that it's likely to go because you're allowed to use less and less. I can see that going. It's getting more and more restricted. I like it. It's actually one of those materials that when someone walks past you and you catch that sort of trail, if I pick up hydroxycitronellol, I'm like, yes, I love that material. It just smells great in the air. It's a lovely sort of warm, again, lily material. Actually, I'm a big fan of all the Lily family. If Lily's in the chat, I'm not talking about your family, Lily. I'm not stalking you.
She's not in the chat, but she's definitely lurking.
I'm going to draw her out with that comment. No, that's one if it does get banned, I won't be happy about, because I like it and I like using it. But look, they're always reinventing things and bringing out new things, and chemists are crafty beasts. So I'm not gonna be too sad. Someone said about oak moss. Oak moss is not banned. I mean, if you remove the atronol, chloroatronol, you can use a pretty good amount of it. Mm-hmm. And to be honest with you, in the dosage that you want to be dealing with it, you wouldn't know the difference. Because I mean, oak moss is actually in very high amounts. Really, it's a very strong fixative. Small amounts are very good for making things last. You know, large amounts can really flatten a fragrance, and it can add like an inkiness to things. So I think oak moss is safe for now. I don't think there's any reason to worry. I mean, it could be banned.
The oak moss thing, like I say, it's I'm really glad to hear you say that, because it's kind of, like I say, it's kind of a myth for a start. I think it's more trends rather than anything else.
Yeah,
people just don't want those kind of really oak mossy sort of perfumes anymore. It's not that you can't achieve that effect, because there's examples of it. You know,
I think I've come to realise that it's essentially it's just gone out of fashion.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's not out of fashion technically speaking. They still add a little bit. You'd be surprised if you read in the back of even some designer fragrances, you might see the Vernier Prenastre. It's just there for a little bit of a fixative effect, and it really does work. I mean, there's been whole studies done. I think Jura did whole studies of the same formula, adding a touch of oak moss, not tree moss, oak moss, and it does actually help the scent last a little bit longer. So they will use it in the small amounts that they need to, not just for the smell, but more for the fixative effects. I love oak moss. As I've always said, it's a material I can put on the strip and put by my bedside and just smell and put me to sleep. It's a really cozy, warm. That's what it is to me. It's the scent of being cozy. I think in terms of fashion, I think especially those big 80 fragrances, Veramos was doing a lot of the heavy work for oak moss. Of course, there was a decent amount of oak moss in there, but Veramos does the lifting. You know, anything that's really gets really loud and powerful, it's usually a sort of supporting synthetic doing the work.
So what's that?
Veramos.
Yeah.
It's also called Evanyl.
Evanyl, yeah.
It has got that. It's a powder. It comes in a powder form, and it is very sort of warm, mossy, dry, papery. It's used. I mean, it's a known thing that if you add it, into a fragrance, fragrances can smell a little bit more dated, because it adds like how can I describe? Almost like a filter. It's like having a really good 4K image, and then you put a bit of Veramos in, and then it adds like this sort of more vintage-looking 70s. Yeah,
yeah.
It adds
sort
like
of
a filter
tone.
Yeah, and it's recognizable. But then this is an interesting thing. It was used to great effect in things like Baccarat Rouge.
I was just going to say, people say about Baccarat Rouge, but really that formula, and like I say, I've probably gone on about this like a broken record, but as egregious as you might find it, or as like kind of like a knitting needle in your fucking ear as it is in your the screech of the thing, it's a very novel formula. I mean, it's fucking genius, to be honest, for bringing like Hedione, the Veramos, the fucking ethyl maltol, and these things just together in like such a almost crude kind of basic kind of way, and then it's got this weird little like it's got like a saffron-y kind of note to it as well, and like slight orange or something. It's like it's like that kind of thing where just sometimes in music or art or certain things, there's this like simplicity of something with all these well-known kind of things like a chord progression or whatever, just brought together in like a really like unique way to make something that's like more than the sum of its parts. And I hate it. I don't want to wear it particularly. It's fucking annoying. But hey, it kind of changed. You know, it was a sort of game-changing thing, and people seem to love it. So who am I to say? And from a technical aspect, I can appreciate it and go, fucking hell, how do you use that much of something? And because you wouldn't think, like, it's the like ambroxan as well, isn't it? So the ambroxan kind of tempers down the ethyl maltol, because when I saw the dose of the ethyl maltol, I was like, you are fucking joking. This is going to be ridiculous. And it is sweet, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But the balance, the interplay between that and that kind of seasidey weirdness, that sort of aerated thing you get from the ambrox, it works.
That's an interesting. You mentioned that the ambrox, because ambrox is very fixative as well, and it has things. If you put too much in, it can really drag everything down.
Mm-hmm.
And an ethyl maltol is different. You put a little bit in, it just wants to make everything go up.
Yeah.
So there's like this tussle between the two. And I could imagine maybe it was a hard balance to reach. I don't know how many iterations it took him to make that.
Mm-hmm. But for him to even think in those terms, that's pretty, you know, I think other perfumers look at that. They certainly look at the success of it. Fucking hell. They look at that perfume and go, I think they appreciate what Kirchen did there, whether you like him or not.
It's a very abstract piece.
Mm.
It is for me, it's a very abstract perfume. I don't know how he approached it, whether he had more materials, more ideas, and then simplified it, or he started with a very simple idea.
Yeah. Well, the idea was heat, wasn't it? It was the temperature of the glass or whatever that they make the Baccarat red glass or whatever it is.
Yeah.
That was the inspiration, and it was originally supposed to be a very niche perfume that came in a Baccarat bottle. You know, some ornate flacon that they made, you know, only a certain amount of. But it was such a popular thing that, well, this is the story. I mean, I don't know how true it is, but then it became a mainstream release for his brand.
Yeah. Does he have to pay Baccarat for the name? How much is?
I think
how
it was
much
a
have they made?
partnership, wasn't it?
I think it was probably they've benefited from that probably more than their glassware business. I would argue. I remember, and this really pissed me off at the time, and I can't remember the full details of it, but there was some kind of slightly gothy sort of indie perfumer who had a brand called Black Baccarat, right? Not Baccarat, Black Baccarat. I think she was called, something like that. And they sent her a cease and desist because she was making perfumes. I mean, I'm not being funny, but she was making like dog shit. Like she wasn't adhering to any, any of the restrictions or anything. She was just making her own fucking slop that people were kind of going, oh yeah, this is great. I mean, I never smelled them, but they were probably shit. I'm just going to put it out there. They were kind of witchy, sort of like brown fucking brews, right? And she had this name, Black Baccarat, which means something. It comes from like I don't know where she got it. It was from some kind of indigenous culture or some kind of meaning to it. And Baccarat's okay. It's a draconian measure. They were being twats, right? She's a fucking nobody, just some American little small time perfumer, and they sent her a cease and desist saying, yeah, don't use that because you're making perfume which could be associated with our name, because we have made a perfume with Francis Kirchen, and that kind of encroaches on that. And they had I put it to her because she put out loads of they're trying to muscle me out and blah blah blah, and I was like, well, if they've got the name protected, doesn't matter how you spell it or whatever, because I've got a trademark on a name. And I get, alerts from, somebody in this country has got a very similar name to your product. And I'm like, is it in the same space as my product? Well, no. Well, I don't give a shit then. You know what I mean? If it was it's a disinfectant product, right? So if it's another disinfectant, then yeah, I'm bothered about it. But if it's not, I don't care. But I kind of understood. So I was sort of playing devil's advocate. So I was like, it's not really fair of them to kind of crush on her. But also, just change your fucking name, love. Why is it such a big deal? You know what I mean? You're just this shitty little brand.
Yeah.
You've got your followers. Anybody will just follow whatever you do anyway. Just call it something else because they've got it and they wouldn't. I mean, what were they really going to do anyway? I think they were just putting the letter out there, but she made such a big fuss about it, and it very much played into the I'm being bullied by this kind of big.
Yeah.
And I was like, it really, it's a simple thing. I'm sorry, but you've stepped on their toes. Just do something else. That wasn't a very popular view with her. Yeah, right on, like fuck the man and all this. They were all kind of rallying behind her. But I just thought it's really daft. I mean, it's like I say, it's kind of a bit twatty of them, but it's their name, So
if she was creating the name and wanted to trademark that name, and she said she started a brand, she had a lawyer, I'm 100% sure the lawyer would have flagged this up.
Can I just say, Jura, that is exactly what happened, right? She tried to protect that name, right? So I then put to her, because she did not like this at all, I think I got blocked, but I said to her, you're trying to do exactly what Baccarat have already done, yeah? So the only reason that it was flagged up in the first place is because you tried to protect your name, Black Baccarat, on your perfume. Yeah. And they went, nah, that fucking already exists, sorry, love, you can't do that. Yeah. So me then putting it back to her that you're only trying to engage in the same system that they're using to push you out. So unlucky, you know what I mean? Sorry, that's the way the world works.
I know someone who's starting their own brand, and they're in the process of trying, and their lawyer mentioned like that this name is too similar, and they're like, really? It's not that, but they're saying, no, trust me, you can argue with me, but I'm not your enemy here. Mm-hmm. It is what it is. This is why you hire lawyers, just to tell you the truth. Just how it is, and you don't put yourself in these situations.
Precisely. And if it was a name that was available, they do their searches, they put it out to people. If somebody like me goes, what are they selling? Oh, it can't be confused for my product. Let them fucking have the name. Do you know what I mean? That doesn't bother me. It's only when that company goes, no, we're going to pursue them, or we're going to send them cease and desist until they stop. And I would say if you're at the point where you're kind of, the problem is that you make something, you don't protect it, and then you build up a name for it, and you think, all right, I'm getting to the point where I need to protect it. You should have already done that, because that will be the point where the rug's pulled from under you, and you can't then do it. So don't build something up that you haven't got protection on already.
Yeah. Are you okay, Rich?
I am here. I am thoroughly enjoying this conversation between you two.
We're getting into kind of trademark
just being
law
here and just letting you two do the fucking work. You know what I mean? It's fantastic. It's very different. It's very different to what I'm used to doing, because I usually just stream by myself and read and go through the chat. But this is very different. It's very interesting. I think is what I should do is we should plan one of these again, where we should go through some materials that both of you have got, right? And you could tell me and the people about what it's used in and what it does, and like if it's used in another perfume that's different, how it's been like worked to be a different like effect in a different perfume, because I think that there is an appetite for that out there, actually, because I know James has been frustrated in his attempts to get the Les Odorants to talk about materials and stuff like that.
Well, I think if they were listening to this, they would go, hang on a fucking minute, we're quite happy to talk about materials, you just never send us any. Do you know what I mean? So that's really, it's my fault really on that one. They would do the materials episodes, but I'm just shit at sending them out.
Yes.
But
yes. Well, the thing is that what I'm thinking is that since you've both already got them, there would be no need to send.
That's true. Yeah, no, I think it's a fantastic idea. Like I say, I've kind of, whenever I've heard little glimpses or seen comments from Jura Rose, I'm always like, yeah, like that confirms. I totally agree with that, mate. Like that's good shit. So I think I would love to do that. I'd really love to do that. The problem is that I don't really have that great sort of in-depth knowledge. Like you've just said there, show some examples of materials and how they're used differently. I don't even know if I could do that. I'd relish the opportunity to try, but I just off the top of my head I can't really think of that. Maybe some that are used in the same way, because that's a little bit more obvious. But give us some time to think about it. Maybe we could get our heads together in between and think about some that we could talk about. Because, like I say, unfortunately, I've not been doing my homework. I've not been keeping up with the materials and stuff. I know, kind of, I need to refamiliarize myself and stuff like that. So there are certain ones that I know, or when I smell a new perfume now and I go, oh, okay, I have a hazard a guess at what's going on. And then sometimes when you hear a little bit, you get validation. You go, oh, right, okay, yeah, I felt there was this kind of thing to it. And then you might hear something from the perfumer or even something the brand says about it, and you go, oh, that was how I interpreted it. They don't necessarily talk about specific materials, which is where it's kind of very much more of a technical thing, where if I looked at the formula, I go, okay, then I can kind of see what's going on here rather than just smelling it. Because I think that takes a great deal of skill to do that, and a great deal of immersing yourself in it, and a great deal of actually experimentation yourself as to how different effects are created and stuff.
I heard that Jura Rose.
Excuse me. No, I was going to say, I agree with James. Off the top of your head, it's always hard. It's something you have to really go away and think of, because I mean, there's so many materials and so many perfumes, and it might seem obvious. I mean, I would say to Jim, I was thinking of one that always comes to mind, and that's cassis or blackcurrant. And I'm sure you can think of ways that that's being used, because it's used in, I mean, there's bases. You have the cassis bud. It's very widely used, especially in the last 20 years. And it has been used in different ways and for different reasons. We can talk about it next time or now. I don't know.
Well, give us some examples. I mean, I know the classic sort of cassis base that is widely used, but again, off the top of my head, maybe I can think of, I don't know, there's like Ralph Lauren one that's got a kind of prominent sort of cassis. There's that Creed one, Silver Mountain
Water.
And Aventus.
Yeah.
Aventus uses it, and there's two. There's the cassis base 345B, and then there's F. So
I think I'm thinking of B, possibly.
Yeah, B is the most widely used, and it's seen as a sort of more fruity. I mean, it does have a tartness to it, but F would be more green. But okay, in terms of application, it is used for obviously an obvious blackcurrant note. It's used in a lot of female perfumes, like I think Chanel Chance uses it a little bit.
Right.
But it's also used in sort of citrus accords. Just even a little bit. Like you could have all your lemon, bergamot, mandarin, even the real thing in there, but a little touch of cassis base just helps it, in a cheating way, smell a little commercial. Maybe that's because we're used to smelling it that way.
Yeah.
That's why I think if you're ever studying perfumery, avoid cassis base for the first 3 years of your learning, because you're going to think everything smells much better than you think it does, because it's kind of like a cheat code.
Yeah. There are materials like that, like I say, but for me to pinpoint, because, like you say, because it's so widely used, it's those things of like when you make a citrus accord, let's say you want to make a blend of real citrus, natural oils or whatever, and then you, like you say, it hasn't got quite that impact, or you want it to last a bit longer or to be a bit more high pitched or whatever. The cassis base, that's where I would use it, but I would say the actual maybe the character of the cassis base, to create like a distinct blackcurrant essentially note, that is a very different thing to using it in the citrus chord. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean the reason why, the base is, it's a lovely material. I mean, trying to make your own cassis note is a different thing entirely, and it's actually making any fruit notes is some of the most challenging things to do. Of course, I mean, cassis base. I mean, some bases are there to replicate the smell of the actual flower and some of the material. So there are things like Cinnarome have like an osmanthus base. I think it was Maurice Roussel who made it. So there's big perfumers that work on these things because there is money to be made on it. Because if it smells good and you can sell it for a cheaper price or whatever than the absolute, that's partly why they do it. And sometimes it smells better than the naturals. But
Are you interested in what's in the base? So are you interested in what's in cassis base? Like the individual molecules?
Not really.
Okay.
Not really. I mean, just for the use. I mean, if I was to make my own cassis note, I probably wouldn't go for that smell.
No.
Like if you smell cassis bud, or actually if you actually go to blackcurrant trees and smell the leaves, it's I mean, it has some resemblance to cassis base, but that's not really what you want to go for.
Yeah.
Like there is a cassis bud absolute, which is very expensive.
Very expensive, yeah. I've never smelled it, unfortunately, but I can imagine it's. I imagine it's pretty lovely.
It is, and I mean, it's famous for that sort of sulfuric cappy note. But actually, it's one of the convincing parts of it. And anyone who loves the smell of like this tree, when you go up and smell the leaves, that sort of cappy note it's there. But there are cheat codes. There's a material called cassis pentanone.
Right.
Which can give the sulfuric cappy note, and actually, if you can add it to a cassis base, you can get closer to real cassis bud. And I suspect many people who say they're using cassis bud are actually just doing that. Right. People go, "Oh, I can smell cappy; it must be the real thing."
Must be the real thing, yeah.
But again, I mean, I'm not against. I've always been. I'm not against creating something that smells like something.
No.
Instead of using the real thing, if it smells good.
Synthetically, or you can mix something together that's cheaper and has less. Well, it probably doesn't have less processes, but let's say it's more widely available to you than the natural, which is, like, say, prohibitively expensive. Then why not? If it smells just as good, or there's not a perceivable difference to you, then why not? I'm a big advocate of that. It's interesting. So, just talking about I've never really dug down into. So I've looked at some like strawberry, and I've made some very crude fruity accords. One that I got quite interested in was the fig, and I think I infamously said on the podcast that I'd sent it to Christophe Laudemiel to say, "What do you think of that, mate?" And then people will still go to this day like, "Did he get back to you?" And I'm like, "No, he didn't." But I have interacted with him. He even came on for an interview on with me and Fliss, but I didn't be like, "He didn't fucking get back to me about that fig accord." But I did a fig accord, and it was very much a collaborative thing because I spoke on forums with people, and I went back and forth, and I put it up places, and people went, "Have you tried this? Have you tried that?" And so it's not just me coming up with all the things, but largely there's always like key components. So stemone would be like a key thing to fig, but when I smell the stemone on its own, I get a very minty kind of note that I wouldn't necessarily associate with fig, but there's so much of it in there that it's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I've shown people. There's a famous fig fragrance from Perfume Reviews called Ignusa. Have you tried it?
No, I don't think I have.
Try it if you're into fig. It's a really, I mean, it's probably, I think, one of the best from the brand. I mean, they do a lot of like gourmand things and lemony things, but it's a really good fig, and it's full of stemone or stigmone, and it definitely has a mintiness, and a lot of people pick up on that. Just without the power of suggestion, they go, "Oh, minty."
Right.
So and people will say, "There's no, actually does smell like mint trees," and again, it's one of those things. Fig does have a mintiness, which but I struggle with in terms of smell unless you really research the similarities in molecules and what's actually the active ingredients, chemicals that giving that smell. Sometimes things can have a texture in terms of smell. So geranium, for example, a lot of people say it's minty, but for me it's not minty smelling, it's the texture of mint. It has this sort of weird velvety leafy feel that I get from mint, not necessarily the smell of mint. And that's partly why it works well with things like mint, peppermint. So I'm wondering whether the stemone is more of a textural thing, smell, that's giving the coolness, or that can give like a minty.
There is definitely that, like you say, the velvety, the coolness. I would say kind of dry with things like geranium as well. There's a sort of dryness to it, which is that kind of airy, cold sort of blast of I do get a mintiness from geranium, and I can with varying different degrees of what I perceive as the geraniol in rose oil, I get a different level of mintiness from different roses. I mean, I'm assuming you are a rose lover.
I do like rose. I mean,
do you like the really geraniol heavy kind of ones?
I do. Actually, if I ever make a rose called geraniol, it's usually heavier. I mean, it's not good for what do you call it, IFRA or EU compliance. But I like geraniol a lot. It's that sort of, for me, lemony. I always think lemony yellow when I smell geraniol. It's that's the part of me it gives. It's that part of a rose, and it does have a slight Turkish delight feeling to it. Rose water. I mean, I love geraniol.
There is a very rose watery material. I can't think off the top of my head what it is. It's quite cheap, and I know because I think when I bought it, I bought quite a big volume of it. I wouldn't normally do that unless it was cheap. I can't remember what it is now. I'd never used it, but a lot of people were like, "Oh yeah, I always use it in my rose accords and stuff." And I found it very, very light, but has all the smell. It smells. I mean, it smells exactly like rose water to me.
Is it Damasco?
No.
Is it a natural?
No, I don't think it is. I think it's a component of rose oil. I will have a look for next time. But it's quite a common one that lots of people use, and I never had it.
Citronella?
No. It's called rose something.
Okay.
I'll have to dig it out because when you start talking about rose materials or things that are in rose oil, there's quite a lot, isn't there?
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, you can make it convincing of like 4, but yeah.
Of course, but you could by the same rules, you could use a complete other 4 and make something totally different. Like for example, do you like rose oxide?
No.
No, I knew you wouldn't.
No.
I had a feeling that you wouldn't because it's quite sharp and fucking.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't particularly like it, to be honest. I think it kind of typifies that modern rose that has none of the warmth or like soul of rose, does it?
Yeah. No, it's like, you like Jarvinol. Jarvinol, it's great with rose accords. Funny enough, it can work really well. You wouldn't think it being like a sandalwood synthetic, but that's how it's sold to be. Like a lot of these things are sold as a synthetic or something. It doesn't mean you have to use it in that way. I remember, I think there's a material called cumin nitrile, and because it has cumin in the name, doesn't mean you have to use it as a cumin note. For me, it works well with things like cinnamon or sandalwoods or.
What's weird, I have a little sample of that. I suspect we may have got it from the same place. From his name escapes me.
Powell?
No.
Was it called Rose Pacifica?
Who?
No, there's a guy. It's terrible that I forgot his name. He kind of worked with Sarah McCartney for a while. You do know him, Jura,
Sherwood.
Sherwood, yes.
Yeah, I get you. Yeah.
Yeah, that guy. He sent me some of that in a little sample. And weirdly, do you find that anything with like nitrile on the end smells a bit like this sounds weird to say, right? Because I know the chemistry, but anything with nitrile on the end kind of smells like the nitrile, no matter what it is.
Yeah, I haven't smelled it.
Enough of them to have that association. Well, I like I say, cumin nitrile. There's another nitrile, and I was like, these all kind of smell, even though they're totally different things. They still have this like whatever it's called nitrile. Because I know that doesn't even necessarily mean that, because the chemical name of something is you may as well just pick whatever the fuck, you can pick out of a massive list of fucking things.
No, but you're not entirely wrong, because like acetate things usually means more fruity.
True, there are. The thing is, whenever you think, there's always exceptions to the rule. That's the thing, isn't it? But whenever you start to think, oh, this molecule looks a bit like that. Yeah, it looks a bit like that in 2D, but in fucking 3D, it's totally, So you start to go into you setting traps for yourself. But so they're the nitriles. Because I think there's a violet nitrile as well, and I find the violet and the cumin nitrile have a similarity. And then a third one. So that to me then creates a kind of, it's more than a coincidence that, I got the fucking Columbo sort of thing going on.
Interesting. No, I haven't tried violet nitrile. The cumin I do have. But for me, I don't see it as like a cumin note. If I was to sort of use more of a cumin note that's not cumin, I'd probably use Immortelle. Or what's that, maple lactone, for example?
Oh, yeah.
Is for me more cuminy.
What do you think about these nutty... So do you ever use those really powerful, like, pyrazines and stuff like that?
Yeah, absolutely. They're great. Even in small... I read somewhere, I don't know where, but I've probably read every article written by Jean-Claude Ellena, all his books. But there's somewhere that he uses pyrazines and everything, and I can see why. Because he has a lot of transparency. He uses a lot of Hedione, for example. Yeah. I know people attribute a lot of ICV Super to him, but a lot more Hedione, a lot of the Jardin line, even the colognes, Hermes Essence, they're really overdoses of Hedione. And there's a way of Hedione just making a lot of transparency in space. So pyrazines act as sort of a nice... And there's different types of pyrazines, and they smell very different. Some are more vegetal, some are more fatty, some are more nutty, some are more earthy, some are more, I suppose, gourmand smelling, if we could put in with the nutty, or savory. But they have a way of sort of, and they are powerful, using small dosages, but they add a bit of sort of heft or volume in places. Again, it's that sort of tussle. A bit how we were talking with Baccarat, how the ethyl artile was sort of pulling everything up while the Ambrox is pulling everything down. I suppose Hedione is pushing everything out, but pyrazines are bringing everything back in again.
Yeah. I think that is a thing that's often said about Hedione, and it's something that is really useful for, certainly when you're sort of learning perfumery, to think of things being pushed out or being diffusive or, having that like quality, because you have to think in those kind of terms, or everything comes out flat, doesn't it? And there's certain these super materials that you can just find and go, okay, I don't need to go really heavy with my things. I can have that Jean-Claude Ellena kind of transparent. That's why I love that kind of that aspect of perfumery where like kind of less is more. And utilizing, like making things like that do the heavy lifting without them becoming boring or characteristic of that particular thing. Using them in a really interesting way to sort of carry this, like you say, like a pyrazine or something really, some quite wacky sort of material that you can just use in a tiny little dose that will just give a little bit of a strange sort of characteristic. So, yeah, I think do you? Because obviously you're saying about Jean-Claude Elena, and he had what people see as a limiting list of materials, and I think, well,
I am going to pop to the bathroom. Give me
okay.
5 minutes. Just you two, just crack on.
So,
Just crack on. I'll be back in a minute.
you know the famous list of like 200 materials, or however many materials it was that he used.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've probably seen that, right?
Yeah. It's in the, he has a book. I can't remember the name of it. What is it called? I have it somewhere, but he mentions it in there as well.
Yeah. And a lot of people see that as, oh, I can't believe, and I was kind of like, well, I think it's fascinating that he, almost sort of limits himself, because I don't think that's strictly exactly, all of them or whatever. And obviously new things probably came along after that was published or whatever. But I also think that kind of sometimes limiting your palette can, in whatever art that you're doing, can be really useful. To not make you be overwhelmed by this huge, you could be sat at a fucking perfume organ and be looking at like hundreds of thousands of materials, whatever, and it almost is sort of overwhelming. Whereas if you kind of go, right, okay, I'm going to really refine my aim down to these things that I need, and then anything else is just kind of just an addition to put in there. And I think that, like I say, that can be really useful. It can be really useful in music, because I used to make music and stuff, and I think sometimes using like one particular synth or just one software, or going, I'm going to go back to just doing everything kind of in a sort of analog like process where I record, separate tracks or whatever, rather than I sit down at a modern DAW, like an audio workspace where I've got everything at my disposal. I've got samples, I've got fucking anything I can use. That can be too overwhelming, and you can end up not creating as cool a thing as you could if you just stick to one thing at a time,
Yeah. No, I think, I mean, in terms of, I think obviously Jean-Claude Ella went on a journey to get to that 200. All of his earlier work is very sort of classic, and he's probably he's probably smart most materials. And I'm sure he swaps things and adds things and takes things away. I don't know if it was, he got to a point where he felt that was necessary, or he was trying to push himself. But I mean, there's a lot of materials. I mean, I say I have 800, but if I was to really be, brutal, I could probably half that if I really wanted to. I could say, well, do I really need all these different rose materials? I mean, I probably there's some Damascones I don't use. I don't need it. So there you go. There's one gone, for example. He did call it, he says he had like a watercolor style, which I see, and I think as again, the Hedion did a lot of work there. They sort of watered everything down, not in a bad way. It made everything a little less vivid, but also allowed him to have a lot of space to paint a lot of color, and that sense of simplicity. I actually think, even if you don't like his style, really paring things down really exposes a lot more skill.
Agreed. Yeah.
Because it's not just simply overdosing on just certain materials, or really trying to balance them and being patient with materials and watching them, So say if he's using, I don't know, a lily material like Ninful, it's a very powerful material, but if you wanted to create an accord with, let's say, fructone to create like a sort of like a fruity lily smell, you'd have to really balance that to perfection for it to sort of work in a sort of a coherent way where it's actually something else, not those two materials.
Sure.
And that's what he does really well. And it's not until you actually start, if you try to make things like he does. That's why I think there's a lot of perfumers that respect him. Because I think most perfumers have thought, I'm going to have my sort of Jean-Claude Elena phase and try and do something like in Jardin Solanil. And then you realize there's a lot, you wish you could just look at people at the formula and realize what's the balance going on here.
Yeah.
It's not just, simply putting those, 16 materials together.
Yeah. that's what I think. That's what I think is kind of missing in indie perfumery, and that there's a lot of people who kind of rush into releasing, or thinking that I've got something that they're happy with. Whereas I think being, a real perfectionist and really wanting to hone your craft so that you're making something that, okay, maybe it's not on par with a trained perfumer. That's a very difficult thing to do, but or even having your own style is an extremely difficult thing to do in any art form. Again, because there's so much content out there. There's so much art that people have made already that it's very, very hard to stand out. But I think if you, again, trust in the kind of process and trust in your striving to like do something that's kind of elegant, but there's a lot of work behind it, but it seems effortless. I think that's got to be the best direction that you should really try and go in. And I feel like you've been doing it for quite a long time, haven't you? Have you thought you've got to a stage where you're happy with anything that you would potentially go, maybe I want to start looking at whether I could, have my own brand or whatever?
I'm never happy. That's the thing.
That's good. See, that's what I mean.
I'm never, because there's always that you come back to it, and I'll be honest. There's sometimes you just need to leave things for 6 months to a year. I know it sounds like a lot, and then come back to it.
No, it's not. It's not a lot. That is even longer.
Yeah, and then you can sort of come at things a very fresh way.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's just. I mean, time is a luxury, and I understand why the perfume industry, and I think a lot of modern perfumers get a lot of slack, especially for the big houses, but they're under a lot of time pressure, not just financial pressures and creative pressure, but time pressure. And I think if you're doing anything creative, time, even just not leaving something. So you create something, you think you're happy with it or you're not happy with it, and just being able to have the luxury of leaving that for a year to come back to it and actually see if it sounds ludicrous. I mean, a lot of perfumers, if you read Edmund Renitzka's work, he was doing that, but I mean, he was in a very privileged position to do that. You're talking about a man that had a tax break from the local government because he was Edmund Renitzka.
Yeah.
He could wait around and let that happen, and you think, well, what's he doing with his life? That's not for us to judge, but it manifested. One thing I try to do a lot, and I think if there's anyone, like even hobbyists and trying to study, do try and emulate perfumes. Don't go and have a look at. You can have a look at a GCMS if you want to, but I'm going to be a little bit controversial here. Don't. Smell Shalimar, for example, whether you like it or hate, and try it and just sit around and say, if you have the materials or if you have 80% of what you think the materials are, try and recreate it. It's the same. It's the same exercise if you're an art student and you have to sit in an art gallery and you have to try and, paint that Picasso or something.
Yeah.
You're trying to learn the thinking, the balance, the effort needed. It's like a conversation. And actually, when you're sitting down, you're trying to make Shalimar, you start to pick out things and realize how important things are. One of the biggest, there's a perfumer, Guy Robert's son, Francois Robert. I showed him one of my chypres, and the first thing he said to me was, "There's not enough patchouli in this to be a chypre."
Right.
And I was like, "You're right."
According to what rules?
and when I compare it to things like Mitsuko, and I was going for just as an exercise to learn how to make that sort of Mitsuko style chypre, Diaghilev, what you want to call it, Rochas Fen.
Yeah.
And then when you actually smell it, I was thinking, there is a lot more patchouli in here than you think.
Yeah.
And you learn that, and it's a lesson. And now when you make it and you put enough patchouli in there and you realize how much of the formula it needs to be, you realize it's a lot more important than you thought it is.
Now, it's interesting that you say that specifically about patchouli, or he said it about patchouli. I think it's actually quite surprising how much patchouli and maybe vetiver is in all perfumes.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
there are certain materials that you can think pretty much they will be in most formulas, right? In some capacity, which is why patchouli is such an interesting material in the way that it's used. That's one that I could probably say, oh, it's used in lots of different ways, or it's there just to make perfume more perfumey, for want of a better term.
Yeah, and it's where these sort of, like, there's a difference on, if you're creating perfume, you want to get in the technical side. It's a very different way of looking at to being on the receiving end. And for example, like if you pick like a sort of rose oud fragrance that you may love, and you won't see vetiver listed on the notes for no reason. It's oud. It might say cypriol and saffron and rose and cinnamon and musk and sandalwood, whatever. But there's a high likelihood there's a lot of, say, something like vetiver acetate doing a lot of heavy work in there, and the perfumer will smell that and they'll go, oh, vetiver acetate, and you say, what are you talking about? Yeah. It's an oud rose. They're not wrong, and and both are not wrong. It's how you receive a fragrance and actually creating there's two different ways of approaching it.
Sure.
And for me, like, even talking to people about fragrances, it's of no use for me to say, oh, there's a big vetiver note in that rose oud. Yeah, that's not what they're receiving it as. They're receiving it as an oudy, sort of woody, earthy fragrance, whatever.
Yeah.
But if you want to make that fragrance, you have to know how important some of these materials are to create that effect.
Yeah.
And you learn this as well through trial and error as well. So.
Yeah, but if you maybe gave examples, like you could show them that without the vetiver acetate or whatever, they could potentially perceive the difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. I always use the example of Killian's Black Phantom. You remove it from that, you know the difference. You don't. See,
I'm not that familiar with that fragrance. I remember trying it and thinking, oh yeah, I quite like that, and whatever. But it's not one that I'm overly familiar with. But like you say, people wouldn't necessarily like go. They'd think, oh, it's a kind of, is it gourmand type thing, and obviously vetiver acetate, I would say, is pretty much the quintessential vetiver note that people know from most common perfumes, because I mean, I was saying it used to be quite cheap or whatever. It actually isn't, is it?
No, it's expensive. I mean, it's derived from vetiver, so it's actually an extra process.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. But it's got like a, when we were talking about Clearwood before, it's the same kind of thing where it's something slightly stripped away. So there's more to a patchouli oil, but there might be a slightly rubbery off note that you don't necessarily want. Where using, same with vetiver, there might be a slight nutty or too earthy kind of note to it that you don't want. You want a cleaner thing that maybe works more with the like a grapefruity type, like the Nuke-Ketone and stuff like that, to bring that out of it. So you'd say, maybe I want a slightly cleaner vetiver. I don't want these other things kind of muddying up the composition, where they maybe wouldn't use a natural vetiver. And things like vetiver and patchouli, depends where they come from. You Java vetiver or how long they've been aged for. They'll have very, very different characters. So I think having something like a vetiver acetate is almost like taking it back to the kind of drawing board of, I want it to be a vetiver note, but I don't want it to have this other stuff that I consider superfluous that might affect the composition in ways that I don't want it to.
Yeah, it could be too complex of a note to interfere with things, and sometimes you want that sort of bit more clarity, especially when you want complexity in different areas. And I can see that with patchouli, it's a complex note. It can be pushed in many different areas. So yeah, I mean, there's different like looking at from things from a technical perspective is very different. I mean, I like to look at. I mean, don't get me wrong. When I collect perfume and I love it, and I love smelling new things and new brands, and I find it exciting. I try not to look at everything in like,
Too
oh, I'm
clinically,
picking.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't, because it ruins it for me.
Agreed.
And
it can remove the majesty and the mystique and everything, but it can also it adds a lot for me, the technical aspect, because but it can be sort of reductive in a sense. That's why I always like to return to the likes of a Rich or somebody who's really passionate and kind of views it almost in colours or like emotions or things like that. That kind of takes it back to, oh, this is why the technical stuff like matters, because it can evoke these other things that are more important to somebody else who doesn't know any of the technical shit, and they don't really care for it either.
yeah,
You know,
That's me.
absolutely.
yeah, and that's why it's so great. And I think being able to appreciate both, I think I have a tendency more to tend towards the technical side. But hey, listen to this, right? Here's something that has only just kind of started happening to me. I was telling Rich about it the other day, that ever since I smelled methyl octane carbonate, yeah. Ever since I smelled that, right, it's kind of ruined Fahrenheit for me. only in the sense that I appreciate the composition, and this is exactly what we're talking about. So the vetiver, the patchouli, the other things that are behind it, the ISO super that's doing a lot of the essentially that is still brilliant for somebody to smell that material and go, I'm going to essentially base a perfume around this, right?
Yeah.
Yes, it's got the kind of the hawthorny like top note, and it's got these other things, and what the perfumer's done there is is it Michel Almarac? He kind of drew out lots of those qualities, but once you've smelled that methyl octane carbonate, you kind of can't go back. So I kind of almost have lost some of the childlike sort of naivety that I had, the kind of love that I had for a perfume that I've worn for a long, long time. I mean, you know, since I was like 8 years old, right? It's that thing of smelling that material has almost slightly. I've peeked behind the fucking wizard's curtain, and I'm kind of like, oh, it's ruined it a little bit for me. And I know how much the ISO super and the very simple structure of the rest of the composition is doing, because that MOC stuff is doing a hell of a lot in that perfume.
You might find yourself, you know what I was saying about coming back things in a year's time. You'll come back to Fahrenheit, and you know that big component, but you'll start to appreciate the nuances as well, because a lot of the times, you know, when people say, oh, they smell a fragrance, and they go, oh, that smells like such and such a fragrance. And usually their brain's picking out, usually it's one material or two materials.
Yeah.
That's so obvious that they've had an association with another fragrance that they've picked out. And then they sort of disregard it and say, oh, it's the same fragrance. Even if there's like an 80% similarity, let's say. But it's not until you come back to things and people go, oh, it's actually a little bit different, and new notes appear, and it's like, you know, the mist clears. That can happen as well.
Absolutely. And I think once you've experienced perfume that much, that I know that putting it down, coming back to it, I'll never not appreciate. I'll never. It hasn't completely ruined it for me, but it's. And also, by the same rule, if I smell that material on its own, I go, that's not Fahrenheit, right? It's not. Yeah. All the other stuff makes it what it is. So I still have appreciation. I have even more technical appreciation for it, but some of my kind of emotional attachment to it, and some of my, people go on about like grass and petrol and all these kind of things, and I'm like, I can't help but kind of see the matrix code now. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
No,
and it's like, I wish, I don't want to see that, you know? ignorance is bliss in a sense, but that's very rare that happens. A lot of the time I'm more the other way, where I smell a material and it excites me because I'm like, oh, that's cool how they've made that in number. But I think I had such an emotional attachment to that, and because that is so characteristic. Would you say that is so characteristic of Fahrenheit? I'm not imagining that, am I? The methyl octocarbonate.
Yeah, no, it is. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And whenever people describe it in other perfumes, oh, that's a bit like Fahrenheit, I'm like, yeah, it's probably because it's got that in it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. For me, I had a very similar moment when I first smelled dihydromercenol. You instantly go, oh, Davidoff Cool Water.
Mm-hmm.
But actually, when I smell dihydromercenol now, I don't smell Davidoff Cool Water. Because I smell Davidoff Cool Water and I'm like, there's so much more going on. Yes, it's a big component, but how it's modified with all the rest of it, I receive it in such a different way.
Sure.
And that's it's like when you smell dihydromercenol for the first time, you think, well, I can make that Davidoff Cool Water.
Yeah,
make that iteration and come back to it in a year and then compare them. And then
you try. Yeah.
You know, it's the digger the deeper you dig, you realize it's always a lot more complicated, exponentially complicated. But no, I agree with you. The methyl octocarbonate, it's doing a lot of the heavy work in Fahrenheit. What used to, I don't think they can use it anymore. But there are other like.
No, that's true. Yeah, there's other similarly named aroma chemicals, isn't there? But I believe they can't use that, can they? It's certainly restricted right down, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it's restricted enough. I'm sure it's not going to be of any use in Fahrenheit.
No. Yeah.
So no, these. I mean, I was going to say as well, like when it comes to appreciating fragrances and my taste, a lot of the fragrances that I would usually buy now, I do recognize there is a slight technical influence on what I like, in the sense that I really appreciate things that I think, wow, I could not do that, or how did they do that?
Mm-hmm.
And it obviously appeals to my taste. It's obviously something I like as well, but I'm like, in awe of it. They're the type of things that usually I pull the trigger on and buy, and I love. And it almost brings back.
You want to marvel over them.
Yeah, it sort of brings back the magic for me.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
So, do you think that smelling all these different materials and like spending time with them has now changed your taste in fragrances and what attracts you to fragrances now?
Yes and no.
I agree. Yes and no. I think
Tell me both why.
I think you'll always like what you like, in the sense that you'll always be drawn to things, and this is why perfume's amazing and why we spend so much time sitting around talking about it, because you can have lots of different reasons as to why it appeals to you, or why it stimulates you from a creative sense or an emotional sense, or whatever it might be. And I think having the technical aspect to it and an appreciation for that, as well as all this other stuff, only adds to the richness of the like I mean, Jura's just said it there, right? That he tends towards buying things from that technical aspect, and I'm the same. But I've got to say, probably maybe to a lesser degree, because there's a lot of things that I still just buy because I like to wear them. And wearing them sometimes means switching my brain off and not thinking about what they're composed of, and just enjoying them for what they are. But sometimes, by the same rule, I want to be challenged or think about what they're made of.
Yeah. Yes and no for me. Like, the thing that really changed what I like in a fragrance was becoming sensitized to certain materials. I have to say that. I didn't really know, for example, what a woody amber would smell like. And I look back at fragrances that I liked, and I didn't mind it being in there, but now it kind of bugs me. Because they have a lot of them in there, and it's not my favorite smell in the world. I think they have their use. But now I smell things and I'm thinking, oh, it's a bit much for me now. Like, I wish it didn't have that as much. I can think of, for example, Frederick Mail's The Moon. I have a bottle. I like the fragrance. But the more and more I don't like, for example, Amber Extreme, the more that bugs me. So it is influencing my taste.
You really liked The Moon, didn't you? Because when I bought The Moon and The Night, I remember saying to you that I was selling The Moon because it had that amber wood dry down that The Night doesn't have. And I remember you saying that you much preferred The Moon.
I do. The thing is, I still think it's a great fragrance. I really do. I think it's a real sort of, I think it's blended amazingly because it's using a lot of big, heavy materials and fitting them together in a very good way. But the less I like Amber Extreme, the more prominent that becomes in there for me, and the more it bugs me, the more my brain's picking it out, going, I don't like that. So yeah, that can affect my taste. And would I probably buy it now? I think I'd be less likely to, simply because of that.
I think Julian Rasconnay can be maybe slightly accused of that because I think his style tends to be quite bringing a lot of big heavy materials together in a kind of way that you go, wow, that's impressive that he's managed to do that. But they usually do finish with that Amber Extreme. Like, he's done that for quite a few brands. I think the exception maybe with The Moon, or did he do The Night as well?
No, that was Robion.
Was that a different perfumer? Right.
Robion,
so the Moon, that's got real oud in it, has it? The Moon? I can't remember. I remember trying these.
The Night's got real oud in it. I know that.
Allegedly.
Well, allegedly, yeah. I mean, if it's not real oud, he's done an incredible job.
Yeah.
Which I don't.
Well, anyway, it's this kind of style that I think he's he seems to be sort of making his own as much as anyone is sort of in perfumery. But there tends to be that. I remember another one. An Amouage, I think that he did, that exactly what Jura Rose has just said. I was like, wow, I really like this perfume to the point where I might even buy it. And then it gets to several hours into it and you're like, yeah, it's a bit annoying, and it's very, very much that Amber Extreme.
Do you know what it is for me? I always use this analogy when I'm talking to people. It's like going to watch a show. Like, I don't know if you're going to watch an opera or something. I know you're that type, Rich. You're always going down to the opera every week.
You clearly know how cultured me and Rich are saying that.
But it's like you're watching the show, and it's beautiful, and everyone's singing their parts. But there's just this one person. Everyone's cleared, and the show's ended, and there's just this one person screeching at the same tone, and they're there for a week, and you're a bit like, okay, you can go home now. The show's over. It just persists a bit too long, and when people say, oh, this fragrance, it lasts 2 weeks, I'm like, the fragrance is pretty much gone. You're just smelling the remnants of the Amber Extreme.
Yeah.
For me, I just don't see that point. I wish it would end. If Amber Extreme as a smell would end roughly within, let's say, let's be fair and give it 18 hours, I would feel probably a little bit more happy about it. But it's just
there are
persistent.
examples. I can't think of one off the top of my head, but I have come across examples of where it's been very, very, very sparsely dosed, where you can smell it, but it doesn't do that kind of thing where it lasts and is really, really tenacious on the skin. But I think they are few and far between, because I think what most, and again, this could be driven by the brands or the companies or whatever, saying, yeah, we like this, but people are paying absolute top whack for this. They probably want it to last for fucking ever. And it's very difficult to make all those things cling to that, because in their nature is to not do that, right? But there's very little that lasts on your skin as long as things like, Amber Extreme and stuff like that. So it's quite difficult to achieve. I mean, there's certain musks and things that I find that last forever on skin as well, but they would give a very subtle effect. If you want something that's really big and has that sort of character that the perfume had, then the Amber Extreme is what it is. And that is a bit of a bugbear of mine as well. But I don't. Again, it's difficult because I don't dislike the smell. But like you say, when it's happening at the time, you can kind of accept it. But then when it just starts being really grinding away, you're like, nah, this is too much now. It's starting to piss me off.
Yeah, and you can't. I don't know. Like, it's hard stuff to get off when it's in a high dose. Amber Extreme. It's hard. I have to pull out all the special chems.
What's the best for getting rid of Amber Extreme then?
I don't know. I scrub myself with a bit of IPM and EPG and pure alcohol and some fairy. It's like anything.
Wow.
Maybe you have to shave the area.
Yeah, me.
Have you ever shaved your area, Rich?
I've fucking cut myself a few times shaving an area, like.
Yeah, you've plucked your feather.
Oh dear.
Plucking feathers and stuff like that, yes. Absolute nightmare, like.
Right, I'm going to have to go because I've got audits. I've got fucking auditors in at work, and I hate them. I fucking hate them.
We're persisting like Amber Extreme here. The chat's like everyone shut up
I
now.
did say, when you started talking about things going on too long and Jura was talking about his opera, I thought he's fucking hinting at me here.
Well, no, it's been a pleasure. I mean,
it's been epic. It's been fucking marvellous. I could just sit and listen to you two talk about this like unknown world of which I have never inhabited at all. The people listening and stuff like that, like, have been engaged and enjoyed it as well, and it's been something very different, and we should absolutely do it again.
Yes, let's do that.
We'll come up with a plan next time.
Yeah.
Rich,
have some focus.
I'll just come round in a couple of minutes and spray your curtains.
You'll fucking not mince hour in a couple of minutes and screw nothing. The doors are locked, the windows are shut. Stay back. Right then we will say goodbye. Thank you very much to Jura, Rose and Houdini. They have made the stream and I have done the square root of fuck all, and it's been brilliant. I hope you've learned something. Thank you to everyone watching, thank you to everyone liking, thank you to everyone joining us, and we will see you all again soon. Bye.
Bye.
Adios.